There we go. Perfect. Welcome, welcome, welcome. We are starting a new stream. Everything seems to be going all right. Hello, bro. How are you doing? I am sorry for the delay. Um, there's no sound. I think the sound is fixed. Maybe, I don't know. Okay, there we go. It's perfect, brother. Sorry for the delay. I just got a haircut, but there was a lot of people. So I had to go to another place. And, it took me a lot longer than I thought. Um, yeah, man. The very first one. Thank you. I'm happy. I'm happy that y'all are here. Hello, Jahira. I still don't know how to pronounce your name. Jaira. How do you pronounce it? But there we go. So what's good? Did y'all saw what happened with Will Smith and at the Oscars? I was just watching that on Twitter. I mean, I know it's kind of old yesterday news, uh, but that's kind of like the thing that has been going on for the past few days, right? I think it's been pretty crazy. Hello, Thomas. How are you doing? Thank you for being here. Thank you all for being here. It's awesome. It's a good day. I look fresh. Got new haircut. I did my eyebrows. That's kind of my thing. I do that a lot. I do a lot of skincare and all that. One has to look good, man. Although I'm not the very best at dressing myself, as you can see. Like Jahir, Jahir. Am I don't know. I'm pretty fucked up when it comes to languages. I can't even do English right 100% of the time. Anyway, so we got a few videos. Uh, we've got one that a few people have recommended. I never watched, but I want to watch it now. The truth about Gandhi, something like that. Didn't even know the Oscars was happening until that fiasco. I know, bro. Like the Oscars is such an old people thing now, I think. But I saw it on Twitter and I was like, what the fuck? Kind of a weird situation, though. I don't know. I don't know if, I mean, for once, you do have to honor your wife, right? But at the same time, I don't know. I don't know if the situation was handled properly. Very violent, He was like screaming and yelling profanities in the Oscars, which seems pretty odd. I mean, there's nothing wrong with you yelling, keep my wife's name out of your fucking mouth. But in the Oscars, really, like, do you have to do that? I don't know. Definitely seemed like some sort of rage, and I understand it. His wife was being disrespected, but again, I don't know if it was the appropriate reaction. All good. How things with you? All things good, honestly. We can start with. I want to start with geography now. How do you guys think? I haven't watched geography now in quite a bit, and they're always very nice. Thailand is a big country, important, very important in Southeast Asia. So I think we should go for Thailand. But I don't know. What do you guys think? The Oscars are pretty bad now. That's the first entertaining thing to happen for a while, and that's the thing, right? It looks like it was staged because, to be honest, like nobody watched the Oscars now, so it's like maybe they did it to like increase viewership or increase how people talk about the Oscars. I don't know. It's just a very strange situation. Seems odd that Chris Rock and Will Smith would have that scene. I don't know. All right, guys. So we're gonna watch geography now. I'm just go with for my water bottle because. So give me just a second. Yo, T Man, Parker Jones, how are you guys doing? Peter Salas prediction about Russia. If you can, sure, we can do that. The stream is just starting, so definitely all your suggestions. We can watch a few of those. Let me just go for my water real quick. Sorry about that. Famous water bottle. The purple water bottle. So geography now, Thailand. I second the Peter Sahan. All right, perfect. We can watch this after this. We can watch that after this one. God damn it.
I don't even really have to give much of an introduction. You've all heard of Thailand. This country is the 21st century tourism powerhouse that took the world by storm. Will I do my best for this entire video? Yes, I am.
Oh,
so
God.
if you're feeling crabby, don't forget what time it is. Porn.
It's time to learn geography.
We need to stop with the dad jokes, bro. What do you think about the war in Europe? Oh, super complicated. I mean, I stand with Ukraine 100%. I think a lot of people, it's kind of weird. I think a lot of people are using the rhetoric as if we were still living in the Cold War. The language that people are using today is like, oh my God, if Ukraine joins the European Union, Russia's gonna feel threatened. In my opinion, and I'm not really an expert on any of this, I'm just a guy, but like, who cares, bro? Like, who cares if you feel threatened? Like, what does that mean? Are we seriously thinking that Europe or NATO is gonna attack Russia? Like, is that a possibility? Or why would Russia feel threatened? I don't know. I try to understand the Russian perspective, but I don't really get it, right? So I'm 100% with Ukraine. Now, a lot of the economic stuff is a lot more complicated. You know, we have, gas prices rising up. And I'm sure you guys in Europe are probably finding a lot more inflation or maybe food prices. I don't know. Are you a fan of Lord of the Rings and other fantasy movies and games? I've watched Lord of the Rings. I like them. I wouldn't say I'm a fan, but I like them. I also like, I don't know if that counts, Star Wars. I think that's also kind of my thing. And, outside that, I do watch a lot of the MCU movies, but I don't know if that really counts. Harry Potter, I used to like a lot Harry Potter, although I haven't watched much. Putin said himself that the cause of World War III would be if Ukraine joined NATO. Gosh, man. I'm not a celebrity guy, so I don't know if that's in their character, but Chris Rock acted realistically by trying to play it off and keep up. Yeah, that's true. It was very cringy for sure, very awkward. Like, damn, like he didn't know what to say, so he was like, "Oh, Will Smith beat the shit out of me." So yeah, I'm not a celebrity guy. Also, I don't know like half the celebrities nowadays, but definitely weird. I don't know. Definitely all the. Have you heard of Warhammer 40K game setting? I haven't. What's that about?
Due to continuity issues, we have to film this out of sequence.
Oh shit, look at those
Everybody,
pets.
I'm your host Barbs. Get your Geography Now merchandise at geographynow.com. It's not selling out if it's your brand. Thailand, the land of smiles. And it is also the home of Julie, our next co-host. Say hi, Julie. How you doing? Yay! Oh, also
By the way, did we take a look at the, thumbnail? A lot of Thai girls, so definitely my man Barbs is having a good time. But he's saying right now there's just like one co-host. Maybe they're gonna do different appearances. I don't know.
Anya and Solom. They're also going to be in this episode later on in the episode. You'll see them. Anything you want to say to the subscribers about Thailand?
You should visit.
Also,
We're not Taiwan.
Have any of you gone to Thailand? I haven't been to just Asia in general. My mom is in Dubai right
don't
now.
get confused.
So I
No.
guess
No,
that's
Alright.
not
kind of
confused.
cool.
let's pad-see-you it, shall we? They are the crossroads of the Sinosphere and Indosphere and the Malay world, and then they have the inland mountains and the
true.
coastal waters.
And there's so much going on.
First of all, the country is located in Southeast Asia on what is commonly referred to as the Indo-Chinese Peninsula, bordering 4 other countries, and is shaped like Dumbo the flying elephant with a really long disfigured trunk. In that
a very odd shape, the one that
disfigured
Thailand
trunk, they have a long
has.
bicoastal access section on the Kra Isthmus.
What's Mexico's position on the Russian-Ukrainian war? A lot of people don't know this, but Mexico's a very neutral country. It's in our constitution that we have to be neutral unless we're attacked. So officially, we're neutral. But I think the people are, well, I don't know. There's a lot of pro-Russian stupid ass people, but I think the people are split 50-50 between Russia and Ukraine, or just the government is pretty neutral about the whole thing. I always felt the crossroad was more Myanmar, not Thailand. True, because Myanmar is closer to India, right?
Of Ratchapkirikan at only about 7 miles.
7
or
miles.
11.5 kilometers
Damn, bro.
wide. That's not even the narrowest section, though. At the
As
very
if neutrality
end of the
stopped
border with
Switzerland. That's true.
Cambodia, at the Trat province, they have a section that is only 450 meters wide until you hit the border from the coast. Oh, and speaking of provinces, the country is made up of 76 of
That's
them.
true. If it were for me, I would like the government to do more for Ukraine. I'm not pro neutrality in Mexico, but that's just how the government is. I would like the government to support Ukraine. However,
known as Changwat. Keep in mind, all the provinces are also named after their capitals or namesake cities, so you don't have to memorize anything extra. Also, each province has its own flag. They look pretty cool, usually based on Buddhist undertones. In addition, there are 2 special districts, which are
there was a time in my life when I was really into Buddhism, so I definitely love the art and the flags
the same
about
administrative
it.
level as a province. The capital, Bangkok, and Pattaya. The capital and largest city of the country, of course, is Bangkok, classified as one of the world's mega cities with a larger metropolitan population.
You can
at
get
around
lost in
14 million as of
Bangkok,
2022.
or
Here, of
get
course,
swallowed
you can find
by
the 2 busiest
Bangkok.
airports, Bangkok's Suvarnabhumi International Airport on the southeast side, and
Y'all remember that movie, The Hangover? I think it's part 2 when they go to Thailand, right?
Don Mueang International on the north side of the city. Bangkok also has their own port on the Chao Phraya River that meanders through the city. However, the biggest and busiest shipping port is at Lem Chabang at the Bay of Thailand. From there, if we
Oh, it's still zoomed in. Oh, gotcha. Sorry about that. If you're ever playing online games against very nationalistic Chinese people, the one thing you can say to piss them off is say Taiwan #1. Damn.
don't include all the cities that could be classified as connecting to the larger Bangkok metropolitan Bay region, like Nonthaburi, Chonburi, or Prakret. The second largest cities would be Hat Yai in the south, close to Malaysia, and Nakhon Ratchasima, just a bit up northeast from Bangkok.
Nice.
Nonetheless, due to the heavy demand for tourism, the second and third largest and busiest airports would be Phuket International on the west side and Chiang Mai
I've heard about
in the north.
Phuket.
Speaking of which, the country has about 1,430 islands, and Phuket being the largest one, conveniently attached by a bridge to the mainland. The country has 4 main domestic rail lines that reach every corner of the country, connecting to all their neighbors except Myanmar. There used to be a line now known as the Death Railway, but it was discontinued after World
West
War
Taiwan.
II. Today, they are working on rebuilding it, though. Finally, Thailand has 2 international land disputes, one with Cambodia over the hill of Phnom Trap with the Preah Vihar Temple, and the other with Malaysia here on these incredibly small rocks in the middle of the sea known as Kokra and Losin Island. Losin has a small lighthouse, and that's about it. Oh, and it's not a dispute, but Thailand also has this weird salient called the Three Pagodas Pass that juts into the Burmese town of Payatonzu along the border. This is one of the only few places where tourists are allowed to get a 1-day visa to enter into Myanmar from Thailand if they wish. Just that I'd throw that in there.
Keep in mind, oftentimes Thai people also divide
What's up? What's up, bro? How are you doing? Don't know much about Thailand. I do know they have a law that allows people to be arrested and sentenced to prison for talking bad about the king. Damn, pretty rough. You definitely, I didn't knew Thailand was that kind of country, you know?
their country into 4 to 6
But I guess
cultural
Singapore's
regions.
also
What are these
has some
cultural
crazy
regions, Julie?
laws,
There are
right?
the northern Thailand, Lana, and the northern eastern Thailand, Isan, central Thailand, Siam, and southern Thailand.
Tambralinga?
Yeah.
Wow, you never used that word. Wow. So how do you say southern Thailand in Thai?
Pak Thai. It's like literally
Pad
south.
Thai.
Yeah.
Correct me if anything is wrong, please.
Okay.
Now, also in regards to Bangkok, Thais actually do not call it Bangkok. All right, so how do you say Bangkok in Thai?
Okay, so กรุงเทพมหานครอมรรัตนโกสินทร์มหินทราอยุธยามหาดิลกพบนพรัตน์ราชธานีบุรีรมย์อุดมราชนิเวศน์มหาสถานอมรพิมานอวตารสถิตสักกะทัตติยะวิษณุกรรมประสิทธิ์
What? Is that the... No way that's the full name. Like, okay, come on, maybe that's like the official name, but there's no way people in Thailand, that's like when you want to go to Bangkok, do you say that long ass name? I don't think so, right? I mean...
Literally the longest name of any city in the world with spacing. Now, for many years, Bangkok was listed as the world's most visited city with over 22 million
Nice.
tourists, meaning that for the first time in the 21st century, they dethroned Paris. And you, Julia,
Oh,
We
shit.
have 24 hours of food, and we have night
They,
markets.
I
We have
thought
early
Germans
morning
had long
markets, and we have
names,
free
bro. Yeah.
meals.
Okay, enough about Bangkok, though. Another thing you have to understand is that
I
Thailand
also the Welsh have pretty long names on their cities.
is administratively a constitutional
Monarchy. There we go.
Who is
There's the
king?
king.
King Maha Rajalankon or Rama X of Chakri dynasty, taking the throne after his father died in 2016.
He is believed
wow,
to be one
so
of the richest monarchs in the world, and since 2020
that's
has
fairly
pretty much
recent.
spent most of his time living in Bavaria, Germany after the pandemic. As a constitutional monarchy, all government affairs are handled by
alright.
the National Assembly and Prime Minister
Okay.
since 1932.
Nonetheless, even though the king's role is restricted by the constitutional law, he still holds a huge level of power and influence, mostly thanks to the Thailand
Lèse-majesté laws.
Yes.
This means that people who criticize the king, his family, and even their pets can face heavy charges if it's strong or not.
Oh shit, there we go. Even his pets. So what, if you criticize the king's dog, you go to prison? Just fucking brutal, man. It's not enforced on most people except big influencers and stuff, even though it's technically not restricted to them. Holy crap.
Comments.
No comment.
The pets.
Moving on.
That's
Much
fucking
of what is
crazy.
now in Thailand started to develop about 1,000 years ago when this person, Pa Kun Singh Intalatip, crowned himself the first king during the Sukhothai era in 1238.
Later, the Ayutthaya kingdom formed and eventually unified them in 1448 under King, how do you say that? Rameswaran?
Lamaswan.
Lameswaran?
The northern areas known as
Lamaswan.
Lana had their own things going on, divided into 5 kingdoms.
Long story short, they had a bunch of wars with Burma, what is now Myanmar. The Portuguese were the first Europeans to come in. They called it Siam.
Over time, their global interaction developed more than yet they never in became colonized. We've never been colonized. Woo! Well, there was what the time the
Yeah, I think similar to Ethiopia, right? Well, I guess, could you call Ethiopia colonized because of the Italians in World War II? Ethiopia never surrendered, if I'm not mistaken. So I think in Japan they forced Thailand to join them, but I don't think it was like colonization.
Well, Japan got really close to war in World War II, but it was like
All right, I'm taking over you. You're going to be part of my empire.
Considering who's surrounding us, that might not be a good idea.
Oh, yeah. Okay, but you have to give me free passage and join us against the Allied powers.
Okay, fine, sure, whatever.
Do it.
I officially declare war on the US and Britain. Oh, I am not delivering this news to them. Hey, allies, I totally didn't mean to declare war on you guys. It was just a joke to make it look like we weren't against Japan.
Wait, you declared war on me? Oh, I wasn't even paying attention, but okay, sure.
Woo! Saved by indifference.
Hey guys, remember Aaron? He was in the Sylvan Talk episode. Haha.
and yeah, they got by.
Yeah,
Nice.
never colonized, even with Japan.
Well, in any case, with 6 UNESCO heritage sites, over 40,000 temples,
Wow.
Thailand is never short of notable places to see.
Ooh.
And with that,
Over 40,000 temples.
Look at that. The White Temple. Holy fuck. That looks crazy good. Like, beautiful. Like, so beautiful. I've never seen this in my life. This one also looks pretty cool. Century of Truth.
Thailand is never short of notable places to see.
and
Very nice, very
Som,
nice.
Why don't you take this? The notable places of Thailand. Som, you got this. We're out. Hoo-
Okay, so my most favorite place in Thailand, PP, that's like on the south of Thailand. It's a very beautiful island. Chiang Mai, definitely visit. It has a lot of culture. Chiang Rai, that's like a place that you can actually visit, like a lot of elephant. They have like an elephant, what is that called? Like sanctuary. And you can also like see tribe people at in a mountain in the
Oh,
north.
nice.
Ayutthaya
Oh,
was
wait.
capital city. Tribe people at,
There's a
in
tribe
a
called
mountain in the north.
Karen. The Karen tribe. That sounds pretty hilarious. Hello. Look who came to visit us. It's my little chihuahua. This has tones like Vietnamese and Sindhic languages. Nice.
Ayutthaya was capital city of Thailand.
So what do you
like
think about
100 years
Thailand,
ago
huh?
Before they moved to Bangkok, old temple, building, old palace. On the west is the city
My
called
child, my daughter.
Kanchanaburi that has a lot of beautiful waterfall. In the central of Thailand is called Lopburi. That's like a city that's monkey everywhere. It's pretty interesting. People not
I've
gonna
seen that,
rob
I
you,
think,
it's
on
gonna be
TikTok,
monkey that try to steal
surprisingly.
stuff from you. It's really funny.
Some of the world's best architecture is in Thailand. Yeah, it shows. It's extremely. I was surprised by the temples,
Gotta be
honestly.
careful if you go to that city. My favorite place that I always go is called Khao San Road, and then there's a lot of street food there on that.
I've
street.
never
You
tried
just
Thai
visit.
food.
Thank you,
No, that's a
Phil.
lie. I
Well,
think
we
I
are
have.
just getting started because part of the reason Thailand is so colorful is because naturally it just is that way.
That means we move on to the next segment.
And that is.
So, thanks to its location in the tropics, Thailand is no stranger to extreme nature conditions.
You'll definitely see this side of Thailand if visiting.
Thailand is located at the convergence of three major tectonic plates, the Australian, Indian, and Eurasian plates, with numerous fault lines cracking mostly throughout the west and northern parts of the country. These fault zones are essentially what create the shield of mountain ranges, like the Dangrek, Pitchabun, the Dona, and the Thai Highlands, where you can also find the highest peak of the country, Doi Intano.
I also
In
gotta be
between
very
these
careful with
mountains,
this
you have
video,
two
like,
incredibly lush
got a
and
copyright
flat
strike
areas, the central
because
plain,
of
the western
geography now.
Chao
I don't know if you
Phraya
know
Valley,
that,
and to
but
the east, Korat
gotta be
Plateau.
really
You can
careful
find
with
the
these
longest
videos.
river fully within Thailand, the Chi River. Otherwise, Thailand shares the mighty Mekong River on the border with Laos. The largest natural lake in Thailand is way down south, Songkhla Lake, which is divided into three parts, and it does have an opening to the Bay of Thailand at the bottom
Holy
part.
shit, that's gangsta. In India, once a gang of monkeys assassinated a major. True story. Holy shit. Imagine that. Imagine reading that in the newspaper or on Twitter, right? Whatever's your thing. Thailand gets kind of long in like South Chile. True.
The town of
I mean,
Songkhla,
Chile, I
which
think
why
Chile is
lake
like the
has
longest
partly
country,
salty,
isn't it?
brackish water. Otherwise, up in the mountains in the west, the Sinakayam
But that's pretty
Dam
long.
is the largest reservoir in the country at over 17 billion cubic meters of water. Finally, the country is split up mostly into two separate climate zones. The upper part of the nation mostly lies in the tropical savanna or tropical monsoon zone, whereas the Kra Isthmus falls in the tropical rainforest zone. The country has three main seasons throughout the year: the cool, dry season between November and February, the hot
then the
season
hot
from
and the
March to
super
May,
hot.
and the monsoon season from
Oh,
June
monsoon.
to October. During this time, the country is prone to the occasional typhoon on the east coast or cyclone to the west. Quick terminology recap: cyclones are for the southern hemisphere and Indian Ocean, whereas typhoon is for East Asian Pacific.
Hey, to the people that have watched the
Typhoon!
Typhoons
Well, I just know
video.
that Thailand is very humid and a lot of mosquitoes.
Not just
I
any
haven't
major,
been
the
that
major
much
of New
humidity.
Delhi, the capital and largest city.
It's like
Oh, what the hell? Imagine if like the Mexico City major was killed by monkeys. It's just unbelievable.
a do or
But
die.
hey, what a great story. It sort of reminds me when the story of the Dutch eating their prime minister.
I know. Well, in
It's just
any
one of
case,
those
Thailand
things,
is
right?
classified as newly industrialized country, making the 8th largest economy in Asia. Second, Southeast Asia after Indonesia. When it comes to
Nice.
business, Thailand is a hustler and we're good at it.
Walking down the alleyways in Bangkok, you will find almost any type of vendor or profession, whether legitimate or questionable.
We always have legitimate industry.
Yeah,
What are you
but
talking about?
People always go towards the wacky side.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
There's
that's a
real stuff, too.
stereotype. For one, since the 80s, Thailand has designated 25% of land area of forest protection and 15% of timber production.
It's
In
kinda like
addition,
Mexico,
they are
though.
huge on the electronics
There's,
sector,
decent
making
industry
up
and there's,
almost
like, the
a fifth of
shady
all exports.
Now here's where
stuff.
things start to kind of get into the gray zone-ish area. For Thailand, much of the economic activity and numbers are hard to accurately calculate because there is an entire informal sector with underground market activity.
like
This
Mexico.
is sometimes called a shadow economy. This could be anything from unreported or misreported vendor sales or illicit black market dealings.
Thailand lies,
Yeah.
everybody knows this, within the Golden Triangle. We already talked about this in previous episodes, overlapping three countries in Southeast Asia, which are widely known as the second largest opium producing area on Earth after the Golden Crescent in the Middle East. Nonetheless, the government has been cracking down on these types of dealings. and
Yikes.
has been putting a heavier emphasis on
Again,
more
sort of
positive
reminds me to
sectors
my
like
country.
tourism,
You know.
obvious one.
Thailand has a
tourism
lot of
industry makes up
auto
nearly a
manufacturing.
fifth of GDP today and is projecting to grow to 30% by 2030.
Instagram once ranked Thailand as one of the top ranked photograph locations on Earth.
Thailand offers many different types of tourism, from medical, gastronomical, sport, and even nature tourism.
And speaking of nature, here's Gary Harlow to explain. Yeah, Caleb's not here, but you know, the hat turns anybody into Gary Harlow. So what's going on, man? Ian, it's
God. Oh, God.
Thanks to their tropical climate, Thailand is definitely brimming with creatures of all sorts. There are
Fucking kill me.
156 national parks,
I fucking hate
58
this guy.
wildlife sanctuaries, 67
Okay, well, this is not the
non-indigenous
OG guy, but
24
I don't know, it's just so
parks. Now,
annoying.
this makes up
I don't know,
1/3
maybe
of
it's just
the
me.
entire country's territory. Now, there's over 280 mammal species. Everything from leopards to Malaysian sun bears, gibbons, macaques, the Indo-Chinese subspecies.
I'd pay to see the mayor of Mexico City fight in a lucha ring. I'd pay too, and especially because she's like an older woman. So it'd be pretty hilarious to see her fight.
Of tigers or tigers.
Oh, yeah.
That'll wake you up in the
Fucking
morning.
punch him in
Speaking
the
of
fucking
felines,
face.
The Siamese cat actually originated.
Oh, like the ones from the movie, right?
Here, Thailand.
I don't know.
Now,
I
here
don't know
you can
how
also
it's
find
called.
the smallest mammal on Earth, called the Kittis hog-nosed bat or the bumblebee bat. Now, Thailand
You know what,
claims to have the
guys? I'm
first
sorry if you
venomous
like the Australian accent, dude.
Kill of me.
Thank you, Gary.
Yes, Thailand's
I don't-
land is never short of provision.
Could you later react to the Boxer rebellion explained by History of China, please? Sure, we can do that. Cringe, yeah. This is Gary Har Medium. I know, it's just so
At one time,
so freaking
they were
cringy. No
the
hate to the
#1
guy, but
provider of rice in the world. And today, their cow millet has been declared the world's
best
rice
rice.
7 times out of 13.
is there a
World Rice
competition?
Conference.
Is there a competition that measures who has the best rice? Like, I don't know about you, but for me, rice is rice, you know? Like,
Thailand is heavy on gastro-diplomacy, which the government initiated in the Global Thai program launched in 2002. Basically, it's a culinary diplomacy initiative that they fund in order to promote Thailand via food across the world.
This
I
is
like
why
that.
you can find
All
Thai
right, I
restaurants
like
in
my
some
food,
of the most
so-
remote place on earth.
Even like the Arctic Svalbard, Norway has a Thai restaurant. To talk more about food, why don't we bring up Anya?
So, guys, sorry, I like Looney Tunes, so that's my commentary. Just don't sue me, okay? The street vendor culture is so huge.
I don't know, she's
in
cute.
Thailand. We never sleep on the street, off the street, in a small alley. I think most people going out instead of cooking in. Like every
really?
region, they have their own food culture. Like in the north part of Thailand, khao soi. Khao soi is like a kind of noodle, curry noodle. On top of the noodle, they're gonna have the crispy noodle on top.
Yeah,
of
man, we're gonna be
it.
doing
And
real
when
life
you eat
lore.
it, you mix it all
Especially a
together with
newest
pickle
video that
and
he
red
launched.
onion.
Noodle on noodle.
Noodle on noodle. The sauce, I would say the most spicy Thai food.
Nice, I like
Gang
that.
Thai crab,
Okay.
cooking, which is, it could be ribs or ground pork. Central, I think the most normal thing that people know is green curry or red curry. Khao man gai, pad see ew, pad thai,
Oh,
tom
pad
yum.
thai.
The most popular ones you find at Thai restaurants are central.
Like normal stuff. The northeast, my region, they have like a million kind of papaya salad. The taste is gonna be like
Papaya
sweet and
salad?
it come with peanut. Or you can have isan
I don't know
or
about
Lao
that one.
styles, which is that come with like fermented anchovy.
A Thai
fish
restaurant
sauce,
actually just
which is-
opened
we
close
call
to
it
me. It's
tam
good.
pala,
Thai
or
food
like
is good.
fermented
Asian food in
crab,
general, it's just very
fermented
good.
fish sauce. Another dish is like lard, and they usually have it with sticky rice. The main dessert for me, I think, is mango sticky rice. I have my favorite spot, Mavari. I think at Pak Soi Thong Lo, which is the best mango sticky rice.
Okay,
in Thailand
free
for me.
plug, I
Thank you, Anya.
guess.
Two other things we should also mention. Thailand is one of the largest entomophagous countries on earth. That is, nations that have a high rate of insect consuming.
And you can find that in the street stalls.
Mango rice is so good, really. I haven't tried mango rice, I think. I mean, I've tried mango, of course, but not mango rice. Whatifalthist has 2 new videos you didn't watch. Yeah. In fact, I'm gonna watch them right now, probably after this one. Yeah. I've only had Chinese, Japanese, and some Thai food. Would like to try more. It looks really good. Yeah, most of it's really good.
Everywhere on
Other
Capitol
than the
Hill, and it's like a
insects, I
very
must say.
snack that you can would just enjoy.
Also,
Yeah, sorry.
Red Bull
Not
was
for me.
in Thailand.
Gating dang,
And it is stronger out there, isn't it? It's like-
way stronger.
There was actually a
Oh,
report
shit.
from Zenith International that stated Thai people consume more energy drinks than any other country in the world, averaging at about 11.4 liters.
That's
per
really bad for your
person.
heart,
It's 4
though.
times more than us Americans.
That's
Well,
a lot.
We do have a lot of energies.
Speaking of the energy,
Yeah,
of
what the
people,
fuck?
That brings us to the next segment.
Oh,
The
the people, the culture. That looks really nice, though.
Anya, Som, Julie, answer the
Needs to be sticky glutinous rice to be exact, not normal rice. Oh, okay, got it.
question. What is a Thai person? Go.
Thai person is like kind.
We smile a lot. That's why we call land of smiles.
Religious? Yeah, we are religious.
Yeah, we are. Being
I think we are an empath. We're an empath.
We could be crazy sometimes.
Yes.
One thing that's for sure, Thais are very proud of being Thai.
Every day at 8 p.m. and 6 p.m., the national anthem is played on loud
Ah.
speakers.
Everybody just stop.
Wow.
And people would just stop for 40 seconds and stand there until it's over.
Anyway, the makeup of Thailand
That's a
is
short
very interesting,
anthem.
too.
All right,
Here's how
that's
it
kinda
breaks
weird,
down.
but-
For one, Thailand has about 70 million people, and the government
God.
officially recognizes 62 ethnic communities
That's a
actually
lot.
found within the country.
I guess
largest
most of
group
them
peoples,
Thai.
Of course, are the ethnic Thai people at somewhere around 86%.
Then
of the
Chinese, maybe? I don't
However,
know.
it's a little more complicated. The Thais are kind of
Yeah.
broken up into specific groups. The largest ones being the Korat Thai, or the Central Thai people, that are spread throughout most of the central.
Girl
parts of
on the
country.
right.
They make up about 39% of the population. From there, the next largest.
Will you be reacting to our simplified video on the war that changed the English language? How long is that? I think it's short, right? If it's short, we'll do it. If it's like longer, like 30 minutes, then probably
would be
not.
The Isan or Thai Lao, mostly found near the border of Laos. They make up about 28% of the population. From there, you have the Khon Wang at about 10% and Southern Thai at about 9%. The largest non-Thai groups, though, would be Malays. mostly
Oh,
on the border
Malays.
with
I thought it would be
Malaysia at about 4%,
Chinese.
Cambodian or Khmer peoples.
But
mostly
no,
on the
it's
border
not
with
really a thing,
Cambodia,
Khmer.
About 2%, and about 8% of the country belongs to other groups. A huge chunk of this being Chinese.
Thailand currency is baht. They use the types of ANC plug outlets, and the drive
Both
is
of
on
them.
the left side of
That's
the
funny.
road.
Yeah, they simply just did it because most of their neighbors were doing it and they just wanted to join along, not because of British influence. Never colonized.
Never.
Now, here's where things get a little confusing. Thailand actually has the
Never.
largest Chinese community outside of Thailand at somewhere around 10 million, or about a seventh of the population. However, this group of Chinese people, or Sino-Thai
Yeah,
people,
what?
are actually fully assimilated into Thai society and often just call themselves Thai.
They are mostly from southern China called Teochew in the Guangdong province.
After years of intermingling, geneticists speculate that somewhere around 40% of the population of Thailand could have at least one Chinese ancestor. Today, most of them have actually adopted Thai last
That-
names,
that
or
would
at
make
least
sense,
use
though.
Chinese last names and add Thai words to the end due to a law that states that people are not allowed to have the same last name if they are not related.
Well, in any case, the Thai language is completely different from Chinese. It's actually part of the Thai language group, which is related to Shan language in Myanmar and Laos in Laos.
How much Lao can you guys understand?
60%?
Oh, 60, 70%. So it's kind of like
Lao.
Spanish and Portuguese.
People can understand Thai better. than-
Of course, because they consume our entertainment and stuff.
So the Thai alphabet, or abugida, is made up of 44 consonant symbols and 16 vowel indicators.
Every Thai person knows the
It looks hard as
first
shit,
that
you know?
goes
Like, you hit me with that
45%
alphabet.
of the Thai
I have no
from
idea.
G,
What the
chicken,
fuck am I
to
doing?
H.
Like, look, this looks similar. Like, there's identical letters here and here. What the fuck is the difference between these letters? They are exactly the same. The ones in the middle that looks like W's. And there's another one that looks like a W. God damn, man.
Ow.
Otherwise,
Thailand.
Thai is a tonal language spoken with 5 tones,
Oh,
meaning you can make an
no.
entire sentence using just one syllable but changing the tone. For example,
Oh, I'm not doing that.
So that is like ไม่ไหม้ไม่ไหม้ no so doesn't burn. I love this one. ป่าป่าป่าป่าป่า
all right,
ส้มหิวข้าวแล้วนะ ขับไปเลยไม่ต้องไปส่งที่บ้านที่ขับตามกันไปเลยเนี่ย
I'm gonna add subtitles.
Now, officially, Thailand
Yep.
has freedom of religion. However, the vast majority are Buddhist at about
I wonder how it's like to know different alphabets. That's true, though, because even knowing English and Spanish and a little bit of Portuguese, it's the same alphabet. But knowing, I don't know, Cyrillic, for example, I don't know. you know.
95% of the
But it'd be cool.
population.
This makes Thailand the country with the second highest Buddhist population in the world after
Yeah.
China, even though China is only about 20% Buddhist.
Like I said, there was a
Interesting
time in my
though, Thai
life when I
Buddhism
was
has a
really
lot
into
of traditional
Buddhism.
Thai folklore and Hindu overlap within it. Within temples and shrines, you might see many Hindu or folk deities depicted, like Brahma.
What is the spirit house? You put it there and then do some kind of ritual, ceremony to bless in that house.
For a blessing.
Yeah, for a
All right.
blessing, so that spiritual figure will protect your home from harm.
And you find them everywhere in Thailand. And they usually give them offerings like flowers, incense, fruits, and for some reason, a lot of them have like strawberry Fanta. That's like a thing I see everywhere.
because of the color.
The color
Yeah.
red, right? Thailand also has a heavy culture of short-term Buddhist ordination in which many men
Alright.
are encouraged to serve as monks for a period of time. Monks are not allowed to touch women unless if it's like an emergency.
The last line of the W is longer. The reason their language has so many W's is because they keep winning. Sorry, but I had to though. That was good though. That was good. It's because we use the Latin alphabet. Yeah, I think that's the
Now,
best,
going
you
to
know.
Thailand, you will
Latin
notice
alphabet.
how much the royal family is integrated into daily life.
Every neighborhood has a shop and sell approved images of them, and they're always on the wall.
We
Oh,
won't get too much into it because it'll
like
take way
Saudi
too long to
Arabia.
explain. It's a hot button issue amongst the people, but essentially Thailand has had many controversial monarchy-related incidences within their history. We're not going to get much more into this. If you want to say stuff, write it in the comments. Otherwise, we're going to just move on. Okay?
No comment.
No comment.
she jumped.
Well, let's move on.
Okay.
What better way to move on, Paul? Sport.
Sports. Yes. And with that, here's Art with the
We have sports, we have movies. Man, I think this episodes could be a lot better if they were a little shorter, you know?
sports part.
What do you guys think about that?
It's geography sports time. He's so light. All right, so let's start off with the Asian Games. Bangkok has hosted them more than any other country in Southeast Asia. Moreover, Thailand has hosted more SEA games as well.
I heard the Korean alphabet is really easy. Like you can learn it in an hour. Well, really? Definitely gonna be trying that. Agree. They are long nowadays. Yeah, they're just
Thailand
too
also ranks
long.
high in badminton competitions, which is actually one of my favorites.
Like half an hour. That's
Wow,
a
you know
long
that?
time.
When I was in high school, I used to play a lot. For some reason, I always liked hitting that little birdie. Punish that little thing.
Like, come on. Like, how necessary
Thailand
this
usually
exchange
ranks
is, you
number
know?
one in Southeast
I get
Asia
people
for
like
football,
sports, but
soccer. These two guys here are probably the most famous footballers in Thailand. Alexander Albon is actually the only F1 racer.
hi, hello, man.
Thailand
How are you
in total
doing?
has 35
Now, I actually would like them to be
and
longer.
those are actually
That's
gold. I don't know
interesting.
why.
So really guessing hard, you can learn it within less than a day.
2 5s.
Really?
10. The three
Probably would be
events
trying
that
it.
Thailand has done well in the Olympics: weightlifting, boxing, and taekwondo.
Boxing and taekwondo,
speaking
of course.
Combat sports. The moment you have all been waiting for. Best sport ever from Thailand, Muay Thai, known as
Oh,
the
yeah.
art of 8 limbs. You can hit with your fists, your shins, your elbows, and your knees. And then pow, the match begins. Wacha! But do not touch people on the top of the head. It's a big no-no in Thai culture. Oh, speaking of fighting, let's talk about Krabi.
I like Muay
Krabong.
Thai.
This is a
Never
traditional
practiced it,
Thai
but-
weapon martial art form. The bodyguards of the royal family must be highly trained in this martial art form as well. Competitions and performances are really cool.
Okay, that was
And
interesting.
finally,
Okay,
Thailand
I'll-
used to take part in this unique elephant polo competition known as the King's Cup. In
That's cute. Okay,
2018,
that's
though, it was
also
announced
nice.
that the
That's also an
competition
interesting
was
fact.
discontinued after complaints filed by people.
I like learning new
over elephant
new
polo.
things.
Well, they definitely complained about the elephants, but not
That's
the
good.
horses.
Me too, honestly.
What's up with that, Pia?
I'm good.
Cartoon
Me,
segment of
and
Geography
you?
Now is
Doing
moving.
fine. New haircut.
That's
Done
it
my
for me.
eyebrows.
Cheers.
Your boy looks
Thank
good.
you, Art.
Well, fun fact about Thais, we're very competitive with beauty pageants. On any
Oh,
given day,
okay.
there will probably be some kind of beauty pageants going on with different types of people, and there's a lot of expectations.
So much to talk about with Thailand's culture. So with that, here's Random Hannah to give you just a few more general overviews.
Sometimes those kind of
factoids of
pageants
Thai culture.
are very harsh.
Hi guys, it's good to be back. And remember,
I
you can
also
get a
don't
Random
like
Hannah
this
shirt
part.
at geographynow.com.
Yeah,
First
sorry.
thing,
Fuck it. I'm
and
skipping it.
fun
Sorry.
is
Sorry.
fun.
Sorry.
And a comment only tattoo that is said.
Oh, wait. This is about culture?
And that singular name. And number 5, phone receiver.
Wait. Oh, okay. Fuck it. I'm gonna watch it, you know?
Thailand, if you are on the phone receiving Thai text, you might see the number 5 a lot. Because in Thai, the number 5 is pronounced ha. So they're really just laughing Ha ha ha. Five, 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 five. Every Thai at birth is
Kind of like
given a
Brazil.
nickname
They
in
use
addition to
the
a
letter
regular
K
name.
to
It's
laugh.
based on an old superstition that evil spirits or BSAT.
My uncle went on a road trip
constantly
across
on the
Southeast
lookout for
Asia in the
new known children,
1990s.
and these
He went from
nicknames
Thailand to
are
Malaysia, then to
confusing.
Cambodia and
Common
Vietnam.
nicknames include
He said all these nations were great. Man, you
tadpole,
always have
cat,
great stories
mouse,
about your
swan,
family.
and orange.
I think your family has done a lot, but that's great. That's crazy. That's honestly like the dream
At
life.
special occasions,
traveling
you often
and-
see people wearing traditional clothing. For women, a common thing you can
It's
see
awesome,
is
man.
the sing.
Honestly.
It's an ankle-length silk tube skirt. And for men, you can find a chong kraven, which is a lower body silk wrap.
They look good,
garment.
you know?
There are
The
so
clothes
many
that in
quirks and
Thailand,
customs in
traditional.
Thailand. Everywhere you'll find the nang kwak. It's the beckoning lady statue that is said to bring business and love. She always does. this.
Business and
Remember,
love.
now,
I need
in
like
addition
10
to
of
the
those.
lucky, amulet culture and lucky charms are huge here. Taxis and bus drivers have altars on their dashes. Potted plant culture, or my dude, is a huge thing here as well. It dates back to the Ayutthaya period, in which people needed to keep plants and
Nice,
crops
I like
portable
that,
in case
you know.
floods washed them away. Thai people are obsessed with aromatherapy. They're most popular in the form of herbal balms or nasal sprays. This right here is called a yadon. Thank you, Geography Pam, for sending this on Fan Flag Friday. You will see people with these shoved up their noses everywhere in Thailand. Did you shove this in your nose and then give it to me?
Not that one. I took the green one.
Thais are also really into astrology. I'm an Aquarius. I don't know what that means, but this even ties in
Oh,
every
listen.
day of the week. Each day of the
Listen, I don't like that, all right? And the reason I don't like that, and I've experienced a lot of discrimination because I'm a Gemini. Or Gemini, how do you pronounce it? Geminis? I don't know how to pronounce it. But yeah, especially in the US, they're like, oh, sorry, I don't date people who are Gemini. I don't know how to pronounce it, goddammit. But, that sucks. That's horrible. I didn't even knew that was a thing. But now I hate everything
week has a color
related
code
to
for
astrology
students who
because
each astrology god.
I don't
So
know,
you
what
might
do-
find people
what do
wearing
we
more of
do?
a certain color on a certain day. In addition, there are a series of taboos.
She looks
and
like a
traditions
Hannah.
follow each day. For example, on
She
Wednesdays,
does.
you're not allowed to cut things.
She
So
really
lots of
does look
barbershops
like a
are
Hannah.
closed on Wednesdays. And
Oh, I
finally,
hate
Thailand
astrology,
has
but yes,
so
that's
many
true.
festivals
I don't
and
believe
events
in
to
it.
celebrate.
I hate
would
it.
take
And I hate it
forever to
more
list them all,
because
but
what I
here
said.
are a few of the biggest ones. The Magic Tattoo Festival, Festival of Lights, the Monkey Buffet Festival. I want to go to that one. Buddhist festivals like Buddha's birthday, and Maga Puja. The largest and most popular one, though, is the Songkran Festival. It is celebrated throughout all of Southeast Asia. People shoot water guns and splash each other
Nice.
with water, and everyone gets soaked. I know who I would shoot a water gun at. My husband, because he is hot. Anyways, whatever. Here's Keith's music segment. Subscribe to my YouTube channel, Random Hannah.
Hate the astrology thing. Yeah, same, bro.
What's up, everybody? Keith here. I am back in the wonderful state of Florida just because, well, Florida's just a million times better than California. But
Oh,
anyways,
shit.
Thailand knows music.
You know what? Maybe it's a controversial opinion, but I actually kind of like Keith, you know?
It seems everything in life incorporates it. Even before Muay Thai matches, they play music as the fighters do their ritual dances. Thais will probably say
Nice,
the two
alright.
largest traditional styles are Luk Tung and Moa Lam. Luk Tung is a country folk style with lyrics that reflect the trials and tribulations of rural life. Every Thai person will say these people are probably the most iconic folk artists. Otherwise, Moa Lam is mostly performed in the northeast
It
part
is.
of the country, close to Laos. It is described as being full
I used to like astrology when I was younger, and I see it as terrible now. Yeah, astrology is less than a scam. It's arbitrary nonsense for weirdos. Yeah, exactly. I do think Florida's drunk. Watching from California. Oh, shit. So we gotta have some beef over here.
faster with a fun
I like both, man. I can't listen. I love Southern California, Carlsbad, San Diego. Oof, that's nice. But I also enjoy Florida. Miami is probably my favorite city in the world. So
feel, a funky
I
feel,
don't
if
know.
you will. Usually, folk music is
California
accompanied
has a
by
nicer
traditional
weather, though.
Instruments such as these. I'm gonna point to this list right here. Thailand dance is also pretty crazy to watch, especially Khon. It is Thailand's traditional mask dance done with golden costumes, which is pretty dope because who doesn't love gold? Everybody loves gold. In fact,
love
most
gold.
Thai
I love
people
me
are
some
capable
gold.
Of doing complex double-jointed dance gestures.
I actually
That-
trained under
does this
Chuck
mean I'm double
Norris.
jointed? Otherwise, since
was on the
90s,
floor.
Thai pop
He
or
was on the
T-pop
second.
has
Oh,
been
wow.
ever growing in the music
Shit.
industry. Some top performers you suggested.
Imagine
in
being
this list
Californian.
Right here.
Oh,
Before
man.
I go, one band in particular that I must mention because, well, I'm Keith and I love metal bands, and we all know this. But
You're
at this
Keith.
point,
Come on, bro.
There's a band from Thailand which is called Retrospect, and they have a song called Betrayed. Really great song, really great band. The Sumerian core era of like bands like Born of Osiris, and those influences spread throughout the world.
I don't like
Anyway,
metal
that's it
music,
for me.
but
Thank you so much all to the Thai subscribers. You guys are really great, and that's it for me.
that's his
Thank you,
thing,
Keith.
right?
Well, that was a lot.
A lot. What are your favorite festivals of Thailand?
Well, it's in Got Phangan, yeah? It's kind of like the Burning Man type of party, or even Coachella, or like if you love music, you would definitely go to the Full Moon Party in Got
Okay.
Phangan.
Well, one thing that Thailand is definitely known for is the way how they interact with the rest of the world. Which brings us to the final chapter of this episode,
I used to live in California because I have some family in the Inland Empire in East LA. I hate it.
Thailand has quite a history of branching
Yeah,
out to both
LA is not
their
great.
neighbors and abroad.
One thing's for sure, Thailand has definitely made themselves known throughout the world. Here's how kind of plays out.
For one, Thailand is of course a huge international tourism hotspot, so of course everyone from Australia to Austrians love visiting, especially during peak season during December
Australia
and February,
to
when the weather is
Austrians.
the best.
So pretty much
Nonetheless,
everyone.
No shocker, China alone outnumbers all of them combined, taking up over a quarter of the entire tourist demographic. Obviously, as mentioned, Thailand has the largest Chinese population in diaspora outside
So they're
of China,
good.
let alone having much
I wonder what he's gonna say about Japan. I really wonder
their
how's
people
that gonna
historically
play
intermarry
out.
and mix with Thai people. The only hiccup in relations with China took place in the 50s when this former prime minister instituted lots of anti-Chinese campaigns and restrictions. Also, occasionally China keeps a close eye whenever Taiwan wants to get close to Thailand as well. But today they are close. They share numerous bilateral agreements like a free trade zone. China is
Especially
their largest
East
import
LA,
partner.
yeah.
Their militaries cooperate, and the two are cool with each other. With that, India comes in, and it's more of a historic and cultural bond that dates back thousands of years within the Indosphere. Not only did the Buddhist faith migrate out of northeastern India, some argue Nepal, let's not get into that, but the Thai language also borrows a substantial amount of words from Sanskrit as well as Pali, the sacred language of Theravada Buddhism. India has very close extradition treaties. They have infrastructure investment deals, especially in the India-Myanmar-Thailand highway project, and they have a growing education exchange program. The U.S. has had relations with Thailand since the 19th century, when the Treaty of Amity and Commerce was signed in 1833, therefore making them the first nation in Asia to have formal diplomatic relations with the U.S.
It's kind of a big deal.
China. From there, relations have only grown. Later, Thailand joined CETO, which led to the Rusk-Tanat Agreement. In 2003, they were labeled a major non-NATO ally. However, the closest inner circle to Thailand, though, would have to be their fellow ASEAN nation countries. Granted, they've had quite a few historical wars with the Burmese, but nonetheless, best friends. Malaysia is the second largest tourist demographic, and many have family just over the border in South Thailand. Indonesia is kind of like the mediator between them and any drama they might have on the border with Cambodia. The Philippines shares a lot of similar cultural tropes with Thailand.
We already watched
the
the Philippines.
Buddhist backdrop with a Catholic one, and they are almost indistinguishable. When it comes to their best friend within this group, though, nearly every single Thai person I've ever talked to has mentioned the same country, Laos. Laos is like the little sister of Thailand that has a
would you
slightly
look at
different way of
that?
doing things, but overall they totally get each other. It all started back in the 15th century in the Ayutthaya Kingdom, and despite being under French Indochina and having some skirmishes on the border with Thailand and claiming that the Emerald Buddha was theirs and later installing a government that kind of favored Vietnam, regardless, they are still considered the closest relatives.
Shit happens, right? You fight with your brother all the time.
Nearly intelligible languages. They are both predominantly influenced by Buddhism, and after you peel back all the layers of historical trauma, they cannot deny that in the end, they will always be family and care for each other. In conclusion, you're the Thai people. I'm gonna head out. You guys take it. Ready, set, go.
Longtail boats, street vendors, lots of good food, a lot of beautiful people, and a lot of smiles.
They're all smiling, yeah.
Fun for party.
Fun people to hang out with.
Lots of fortune tellers, empath, sensitive.
Again, the empath stuff,
Circle
yeah.
back.
That was the episode. Hope you had a good one. Thank you guys for joining.
Thank you.
Togo is coming up next.
Togo. All right, that was good. All right, listen. I think they're a little bit long. I think we could cut the Hannah segment, definitely the animal and all that stuff. We can cut that, and probably the sports. We can cut all that, and the episodes would be 5 to 10 minutes shorter. But hey, Siamese twins comes from the two Thai conjoined twins in the U.S., Chang and Eng. Oh man, so that's why they call them Siamese twins. I didn't knew that, man. Wow, that's a very interesting fact. Holy shit. All right, so let's watch let's do some Whatifalthist, you know? A cousin of mine was born and raised in California. His dad was born in England, but adopted in the Californian accent to speak to them. But when talking to us, he goes back into his native English accent. That's nice. I always love the people that have not only multiple languages, but multiple accents, you know? That's pretty fun. That's a very interesting phenomenon. I think it's epic. You should react to Alexander La Mutineur de Peace. What is that, dude? Is that like I don't speak French, so but yeah, let's go. We could probably watch that. But let's watch Whatifalthist.
There are many lenses through which you can view it from. America has never been a homogenous country, and each of the various cultures that have entered into it.
Hispanic. Okay, so you can see there's a lot of Hispanics out here. We're everywhere.
Have brought their own histories and perspectives. I'm currently writing a civilizational history of America that tries to explain how America developed, what makes America different from other countries, and where we're going.
Let's go!
One of the major things to grapple with is the massive ethnic diversity with which Americans often have trouble understanding. Americans, in some ways, both underplay and overplay their diversity, which often confuses foreigners who don't know what a thing.
Yeah.
In this video, I'm going to take 10 different sub-ethnic groups of Americans across American history, starting before Columbus and ending today by...
It's a speech. I believe it's like 5 minutes long. I think you could watch it. Oh, if it's a speech, then yeah, sure, let's give it a watch. Okay, so I hope I'm gonna be... This video is gonna be long. Yeah, I wasn't expecting that it was gonna be 37 minutes. It's probably gonna be living oversimplified for another stream, you know, if I'm completely honest. Okay, Lamuti. Fuck. Why is French so hard for me? I don't know, man. Is this French, by the way? Maybe it's not French. Is it the first one? Okay, you guys tell me if this is the first one. I don't want to screw it up. J.J. McClellan, Canada's weird left-wing anti-American nationalism. I think I've watched that before. I'm gonna search my other streams and see if I watched that one because it really sounds familiar. I think I've watched that from JJ. But yeah, you guys tell me if it's the first one, if it's this one. Yeah, the chat comes a little bit later, but... No, it's by Epic History TV. Oh, okay. Oh, it's this one? There we go. In a brilliant 10-year campaign, Alexander and his Okay. Macedonian army conquered much of the known world from Egypt to the Indus River. In 324 BC, they returned to according to the ancient historian Arrian, Alexander executed 13 ringleaders before confronting the army. Alexander's exact words are not known, but modern historians believe Aryan records of the essence a real moment in history passed down by eyewitnesses.
What I'm about to say isn't meant to stop you returning home. As far as I care,
oh, nice. I like the audio.
Wish. But I want you to know how you have behaved towards me, and how I have treated you. I'll begin, as is right, with my father, Philip. When he found you, you were mere peasants, wearing hides, tending a few sheep on the mountain slopes, and you could barely defend them from your neighbors. Under him, you began living in cities, with good laws and customs, and he turned you from slaves into rulers over those very barbarians who used to plunder your land.
Oh, shit.
He conquered most of Thrace, taking the best harbors so there was trade and prosperity, and put the mines to steady work. The Thessalians, they used to terrify you. Well, we rule them now. The Athenians and Thebans,
Hot take.
always looking for
A
a
little
chance
bit
to
better
attack
than Alexander the
Macedonia,
Great.
was so humbled, myself playing my small part in the war, that they no longer take tribute from Macedonia, but instead depend upon us for their protection. My father went to the Peloponnese and put their house in order.
Sparta.
Then he was declared supreme commander of all the Greeks for the campaign against the Persians. An honor not just for himself, but for all Macedonians. This is what my father Philip did for you. Great enough on its own, but small compared to what you've gained from me. I crossed the Hellespont, even though back then the Persians still commanded the sea. I defeated the satraps of the great King Darius, and made you rulers of Ionia, Aeolis, Phrygia, and Lydia, and took Miletus by siege. The rest of the land surrendered willingly, and their wealth became yours. All the riches of Egypt and Cyrene, which I won without a fight, are yours now. Syria, Palestine, Mesopotamia, Babylonia, all belong to you. The wealth of Lydia, the treasures of Persia, the jewels of India and the Outer Sea. You are now satraps. You are generals and captains. What have I held back for myself apart from this purple cloak and diadem? Nothing. No man can point to my riches, only the things I hold in trust for you all. And what would I do with them anyway? I eat what you eat. I get no more rest than you. Many times I have spent the night on watch so that you could sleep soundly. Who among you believes he's worked harder for me than I have for him? Come on! If you've got scars, strip and show them to me. I'll show you mine. There isn't one part of my body, the front at least,
Alexander's troop were probably like, boss, we want to go home, it's been years.
Scars from every weapon you can think of. Swords, arrows, stones, clubs. All for the sake of your lives, your glory,
They're
and
like,
your
probably
wealth.
like, yeah, I mean, nice speech and all, but can we go home?
And yet here I still am, leading you, as conqueror of land and sea, rivers, mountains, and the plains. We've celebrated our weddings together.
Very true.
Many of your children will be cousins of my own. I've paid off your debts without asking how you got them, even though you're paid well enough and pillage every city we take. Many of you wear golden crowns, badges of courage and honor given you by me. Any one of us who was killed, who met a glorious end, we buried with full honors.
This pitch is so extra. I mean, it's epic, but it's definitely very extra. Oversimplify should do another on Alexander the Great. Oh, that'd be so good, man. That'd be so good. I hope he's working on something like that because that'd be pretty epic. The way I know Alexander was crazy was he kept his troops on campaign and away from home like 12 continuous years. Don't think anyone else in history has done anything like that. Oh yeah, for sure. Absolute. It sounds like absolute madness. But hey,
Many now stand
he was a
immortalized by
pretty
bronze
tough
statues
conqueror.
in Macedonia. Their families are honored and pay no taxes. Under my command, not one man has been killed fleeing the enemy. And now, I wanted to send back some of you who've been wounded or crippled, or have grown old, to be welcomed back home as heroes. But since you all wish to go, then all of you, go! Go home and tell them that your king, Alexander, conqueror of the Persians, Medes, Bactrians, and Scythians, who now rules over the Parthians, Chorasmians, and Hyrcanians as far as the Caspian Sea.
Shit.
who's marched over the mountains of the Hindu Kush, crossed the Oxus and Tanais rivers, even the Indus, first to cross it since Dionysus himself. I would have crossed the Hyphasis too if you hadn't cowered in fear. Who sailed into the great sea from the...
Boss, we just want to see our families. It's been like over a decade. A lot of Macedonian nobles actually sort of consider Alexander a hypocrite for claiming sometimes Philip and sometimes the god Zeus Ammon as his father. Alexander really shouldn't be treated as having conquered so much as enacting a coup of Persia and combining with Greece. It's still an amazing feat, but it's just not rolling over the land. Sup, my man, AC Alvarez. How are you doing, brother? I'd be lying to you if I told you I know a whole lot about this.
Mouth of the Indus, who crossed the desert of Gadrosia, where no one had ever led an army.
But this is badass, I mean.
Who took Carmenia, while my fleet sailed the Persian Gulf. When you get home, you tell them that when you made it back to Susa, you abandoned him and went home, leaving him under the protection of the foreigners you'd conquered. Perhaps this report of yours will seem glorious in the eyes of men and worthy in the eyes of the gods. Be gone!
Holy crap. After this speech, the Macedonian troops begged Alexander for forgiveness, leading to an emotional reconciliation between the king and his army. Wow, holy fuck. Recommend watching epic series on Alexander one day. Yeah, I think we can binge. What do you guys think? We can binge watch that series on stream. Would you guys like that? If you tell me you would like that, I'll make it the next stream for sure. But man, this was so good. Alexander began to plan further conquests. But in Babylon, less than a year later, he succumbed to an unknown illness and died aged just 32. Holy fuck! Sure, that'd be great. Recommend watching San Marino of Geography now. Sure, we'll watch that too. Man, 32 years old. Sort of reminds me of Napoleon and how young he was when he started his conquest. 32. Man, I'm 22 and I feel like I haven't done fucking shit. That would be cool. Perfect. Next stream, binge watching his Epic History TV, Alexander the Great. Okay? Let's mark that in our calendars, especially mine. Bro, this was epic. This was so fucking good. I'm so glad you guys recommended this one. It's pretty crazy how the troops reconciled, right? And the one on Napoleon is even better, but no way you can do it on one stream too long. Yeah, probably we could do one stream for one and one stream for another. But yeah.
By looking at their journeys as cultures.
So we're watching Explaining America's Identity in 10 Ethnicities by Whatifalthist. It looks pretty
how
good.
America works as a society on a broader level.
Alexander was like 16 when he started leading armies. Holy fuck. 17. Yo.
America's diversity is one of its greatest strengths, but it does come with some pretty serious historical baggage. In the Magellan series Ku Klux Klan: An American Story, you can see how some of this history is really dark. Ku Klux Klan: An American Story covers the KKK's evolution from a group of disgruntled Confederate veterans to a national movement that continues to operate even today. The series does a great job of showing the resistance to change and how America is still haunted by its legacy of slavery and discrimination.
Yeah.
Magellan TV is a documentary streaming service made by filmmakers with the best selection of historical documentaries and movies out there.
Sponsor time.
They have compatible price for. Magellan is simple, so go to Magellan TV, set up an account today, and learn about whatever fascinates you. Number 1, the Native Americans.
Okay,
the Native
yeah.
Americans came to America as part of a broad array of various groups and races that I've talked about in this video, but includes the ancestors of the modern Australian Aboriginals, Polynesians, Europeans, Mongols, the indigenous inhabitants of Japan called the Ainu, and Siberians. They came over to America both by boat and walking during the last ice age, and mixed together to form the modern Native Americans. Largely due to the lack of easily domesticable plants and animals, the Americas were thousands of years behind the Old World. When Europeans arrived, the native peoples in the modern United States didn't have metal working the wheel or writing. The modern United States is divided on a line going southwest to northeast, from Arizona to Quebec, the east of which there was agriculture and to the west of which it was hunter-gatherers. In the modern world, partially since there are so few natives left, modern America treats the Native Americans like they'd like them to have been, rather than who they really were. And for both the right and the left, that is basically the image of them being uncivilized hippies. The less philosophic view of the world is underwrit by the need to have a noble savage, and the right by the need to demonstrate the superiority of Western civilization, both of which means the natives get stuck between them. However, the real natives defy both views. The Native Americans were in real terms like most other cultures around the world, with all the flaws and strengths that the human condition brings. Many natives were pretty advanced. The American Southeast had massive cities like Cahokia and
Yeah, like a lot of natives were advanced. It's just that the time difference that they had against the Europeans, for
Illinois
example.
Across the river from St. Louis, which was larger than London during the Middle Ages. When the Spanish arrived in the southeast, they saw developed states with
Spanish
large
Empire.
villages that bordered upon cities, governmental structures, and armies numbering in the thousands. The natives actually defeated the first group of Spaniards that entered the region. I think a pretty telling example of all of this is the giant forests the Europeans saw upon entering the region were actually tended by the natives, who would burn and cultivate these forests to be as...
And you watch the San Marino the episode from Geography Now. If it's the longer one,
possible. European visitors describe them looking
we'll
like
watch
the
it.
manicured
We'll watch
parks
it.
they'd see back in Europe. At the same time, the societies in the eastern United States were the place in the world where women had the most rights and power. However, the flip side to this is that the natives weren't angels. Warfare was endemic, with it often being normal that 20%...
And this is a huge discussion in Mexico, because in Mexico, we have a little bit of an identity crisis in which, well, some people think the natives were really good. Some people believe the Spanish were very good, right? And one attacks the others, right? Like, oh, the Spaniards were horrible monsters, but the natives were so uncivilized and sacrificed people and all that. So it's a huge, well, not a huge fight, but it's kind of like a thing in Mexico.
Young men would die in war, far
The
above
debate
rates in
against
Europe. Just like
indigenous
how
and
Eurasians tend to
Spanish.
fight off barbarians, we see barbarian invasions of civilized societies as a norm
You
in
know?
the Americas. Also, just look at the Iroquois tribe who committed literal genocide against the whole Midwest from the Appalachians to the Mississippi River, killing all the local peoples in order to sell their beaver pelts to the Europeans.
Wow.
In many native cultures, the amount of honor someone took was based off how long they could torture their opponents for. Captives would normally have their bones broken and skin ripped off, and afterwards their hearts eaten in order to take their strength. Which brings me to the frontier period, where the Indian Wars should really be viewed as a horrifying post-apocalyptic tribal war.
Bro, what the
First of all,
fuck?
the reason that the natives were wiped out so easily is that over 90% of their population was killed by European diseases. Something a lot of people failed to understand is that the elites, whether the British or on the East Coast, often had a lot of sympathy with the natives. But there was very little centralized power in the frontier, and it really should be viewed as a tribal war, in which various sides would commit atrocities against the other, which would just fire up the other side, and then it would be a cascading effect. For example, I have at least 5 ancestors who died in the Indian Wars, and the whites took full revenge for any atrocity.
How can you trace that back? I mean, that's like, what, 350 years ago? Maybe even longer. How can you trace ancestors that back?
The natives committed. These often weren't easy wars either. The longest war the U.S. fought in its history wasn't in Afghanistan or Iraq, but against the Seminole natives of Florida. Tecumseh was a veritable prophet/messiah who was able to unify all the native tribes between the Gulf Coast and Canada against the white Americans, only to be crushed in the War of 1812. If you compare Indian relations in America versus Canada, it makes the U.S. look very bad, where the colonization of Canada, and New Zealand also as well, was almost entirely peaceful, while the U.S.'s was marked by breaking treaties treaties, driving allied Indian peoples off their land, wars of genocide and the like. When the anger wore off, the natives were living on terrible land the whites didn't want. A really horrible story is the Trail of Tears, where the US forcibly drove the natives from the southeast to Oklahoma. The terrible thing is that these were native peoples who were actually on good terms with America, and it integrated into capitalism.
After this video,
and
we'll
Western
watch the San Marino
The Americans
one.
forced them to march over 700 miles west, only to take their lands in Oklahoma 50 years later. The story of the natives and the reservations is a mixed story. It combines ingenuity and wealth with stuff
Oh, wait, what? So we got Africa, Haiti, Mexico. All right, bro. I mean, no offense taken, and a USA reservation. And I guess the example is that it's really poor.
the casinos, but at the same time, many of these reservations, which effectively act as independent
You know, when you
countries,
think
are
about
really
it,
third
it's
world
amazing how our
places. Native
ancestors
cultures
survived
gained a
so
massive
many
resurgence over the
world-changing
20th
events
and 21st
that lead us
centuries.
to
And I think
today.
a great irony is that the number of people who identify
It's truly
as Native
amazing.
American
A lot of
has gone
wars,
through
a
the
lot of
roof,
illness.
mostly due to white people with infinitesimally small amounts of native blood identifying as native. However, the number of genetically native people is collapsing, as Native Americans have the lowest birth rate of any group in America, far below replacement rate. So much so that there might not even be natives at the end of the century. There's a sort of sad poetry to the native peoples. They went from controlling a whole continent to being strangers in their own nation. Not even 2% of the population. In all, less than a century.
Yeah.
I would have expected at least one of America's states to be predominantly native, but no, the whites wouldn't even let them keep Oklahoma. Number 2, English Americans. You know how vanilla ice cream is statistically by far the most popular flavor of ice cream, but no one says their favorite flavor is vanilla? Or calling someone vanilla is...
I'll say it. I have no issues with that. I like vanilla ice cream. It's my fucking favorite. It survived by us. It's amazing they survived, but we can only see it's amazing because they survived. Yeah, I forgot. Yeah, you're 100% right. You know, a lot of people died in wars, for example. We only get to, the survivors are the ones that are our ancestors.
As a way of saying boring, but we all eat way more vanilla than any other flavor.
Oh, yeah,
That's
for
the
sure.
story of English Americans today.
Vanilla is nice.
On the U.S. Census survey, English Americans are around 7% of the population.
Very low.
But analyses of anything objective, whether genetics, compiling data from older censuses,
True.
or last
I like
name analyses, show that
pistachio
Americans of
ice
English
cream.
descent
That's
are by
nice.
far the largest ethnic group in America. Americans tend to view their ancestry through who their last ancestor they remember coming over was. In our days of diversity, people tend to only pay attention to things that are spicy and different from the baseline. About 5 times I've told people I'm of mostly English and Irish ancestry, and the person would reply back,
let's see. So, yeah, I mean, he's mostly British and Irish, French and German, a little bit of Scandinavian.
Sometimes even in the same conversation.
Holy
you're
shit.
mostly
Wow, this guy is 100% white, 100% European.
Scottish and Irish ancestry, right? Subconsciously substituting English.
I want to do mine.
The
I really
English
want to do
Americans
mine.
became so large due to centuries of...
What do you guys think I would get? I think it'd be like 60% Spanish, 10% Slavic, and like 30% Native American. But I don't know. What do you guys think I look like,
massive birth rates. In New England, for example, the average family would have 10 children in the colonial era, almost all of who would survive into adulthood and have another 10 children. For a comparison of how much that compounds, 12% of Americans are of Mayflower descent, or a famous boat that came over in the 17th century with 200 people. 12% of Americans is more people than there are in the country of Poland. And the same amount as there are black people in America. Since World War II, the dominant trend in American history writing has been to overplay the importance of ethnic diversity and underplay the importance of regional diversity. But realistically, English Americans are overwhelmingly important to the nation's history. The vast majority of our leading figures in almost every field across...
70% Spanish, 30% Native. I agree with that. I like black sesame ice cream. Very underrated, in my opinion.
Our history.
I don't think
Whether
I've ever
politics,
tried black
military,
sesame ice
science,
cream.
literature, or business were of English ancestry.
Bill Gates?
Practically every major institution of America dates back to an English president, whether government, personal freedoms, economic system, religion,
Bill Gates is English,
military
I guess.
structure, and the list
Didn't knew
goes
that.
on. I mean, culture is incredibly important for how societies develop, and it's not a coincidence that nations with similar cultures like the Anglosphere, but very different geographies, end up with similar economic conditions. And so, the English created the fundamental core of American society. 3 major groups of English Americans came over during the colonial era, creating the cultural framework that became America.
Oh, yeah. We saw that on Crowd's video. We got the Puritans, the Quakers, and the Deep South. Where did the people from the Deep South came? Oh, the Cavaliers, sorry.
The first were Puritans who came from eastern England to New England. They were effectively a religious cult that demanded extremely strict rules and standards of conduct out of their followers. The flip side to this was that their society was extremely wealthy, creative, and functional. The second group of Englishmen were Cavaliers from the south of England, or the second sons of nobility, and their peasants who created the culture of the American South. This was a more rowdy and fun, but also less creative and fair society than New England. And the third group were Quakers from the north of England, who came to Pennsylvania and established an anarcho-capitalist state that became the basis for the stereotypically middle American culture of being hardworking, friendly, not trusting government, and minding your own goddamn business.
Kinda Republican.
All of these cultures spread west as America did, creating their own genetic clusters that are still evident today, and creating the eternal American divide between North...
Yeah, that's true, though. It's interesting that Americans think that way. Most Europeans don't think about their ancestry, since most of us have always been in our homelands.
Middle and South.
Very true. I guess
the North and South,
white Americans are very diverse when it comes to that.
They're permanently at odds on every issue, from
but
slavery.
It's very popular
gay
doing
marriage,
ancestry
with the middle
tests, for
deciding
example,
who's
in
going to
Mexico.
win. An important final note is that
Not in
WASPs,
Mexico,
or
the
white
US, sorry.
Anglo-Saxon Protestants, have a reputation for being wealthy in the status quo, but that's really not the case anymore. Your average English American is poorer than your average white American, and WASPs are actually underrepresented in the league.
No. Mexican, 76% of the U.S. family wealth.
Positions, probably due to their overrepresentation in rural areas. For every Bartlett you find in the Hamptons or Wall Street, you have a Todd in Beatonsville or a Jack in Montgomery, Alabama. Number 3, African Americans. God, I feel like I could literally say anything here and it would be construed as offensive by one of the political extremes. However, I'm just going to try to do my best to search for the truth and hope that works. African Americans came over to America largely so the Southern elite could replicate nobility back in Europe, while white Americans
my family's
were
German,
unwilling
so
to
I would
be
be
their
surprised
peasants.
if something else
America was
came.
peripheral to the Atlantic slave trade since it didn't make sugar, which was the big money maker.
You never really know, right? Maybe you have a surprise.
Of the time.
Thus, America got a lot of the most stubborn and free-thinking slaves from the Igbo and Yoruba peoples of modern
What happened to the
Nigeria,
audio?
who populated the northern South, while meanwhile the southern South was largely people from the Congo and Angola.
The ancestors of most of modern-day African Americans came over in a
Italians
40-year
speak
period
Germans.
from 1700 to
Oh, no.
1740. American slavery, when
Controversial.
compared to the rest of the world at the time, was a weird combination of really bad and less bad. Since America was majority white, slaves had less social mobility, independence, or dignity than other slave societies in the Americas, because if a black person had any degree of social upward mobility, they'd just say, why doesn't a white man do that job? Slaves were forbidden from learning how to read, keeping families, normally operating
really
on the
horrible.
market, and many states forbade or made it very difficult for masters to free slaves. However, since America had such a high standard of living in general, American slaves had better standards of living and quality of life than slaves in other areas of the Americas, and even than many peasantries in European countries.
Oh, okay, well, let's be careful with that. 76,000 income average still sounds good until you realize it's California. Probably. California is just
Black
so
American
expensive.
culture was created by white America to strip them of any ability to resist
Again, the
and
audio
dehumanize them.
They were forced to renounce their African names, religion, and languages that could have given them an identity. They were removed from their families, prevented from gaining any tradable skills or education. If there's any historic equivalent to being raised by an abusive, alcoholic, narcissistic parent, it's this. Black Americans became symbols and scapegoats for the white Southern society. There was mass hysteria about black men.
Okay, this is interesting, in fact. Average ancestry of the African American population. So 74% sub-Saharan African, 22% European. Huh. So your average African American is 1/4 white or European.
With white women, well, at the same time, white men were raping black women at such a rate
that table was probably income by household, not
genomes
individual.
Of European origin. At the same time,
Yeah,
there
I
was
think
a
it
good
was by
deal of
family
cultural
income.
mixing between white and black culture, even during the colonial period. Remember, during slavery, white and black.
When will you react to the Highjan documentary? I already recorded it. It's just because it's long, I haven't edited. And that's my fault, okay? I haven't edited. I already recorded it. I'm not going to spoil it, but it was pretty interesting. but I just have to edit. I promise I'll do it soon. It's just so long, so
Black Americans
I'm
lived
not gonna
in
do much
extremely
editing,
intimate
but I
conditions,
promise
often
soon,
as
like
lovers,
this week.
friends,
It's a
co-workers,
promise.
nannies, and the like. White American food, religion, architecture, and music were all influenced by African forms. A great irony is that the Ku
Yeah,
Klux
yeah,
Klan
like,
might have been based off an African precedent, since very
jazz and
similar
rock
organizations
music.
exist in West Africa. With the end of slavery, you saw a retrenchment of white supremacy in the South for another 100 years, in which blacks were prevented from voting and often had any
Jim
real
Crow
attempts at leadership
laws.
or
Oh,
success
God.
result in lynching or vigilante hangings.
And there's
However,
children here and everything. God damn.
legal
this is just-
discrimination was brought to an end
What
by the
the
remarkable
hell?
and admirable movement by Martin Luther King to gain legal equality. 100 years ago, almost all blacks lived in the South, and especially an area of the Deep South called the Black Belt. But during the World Wars, you saw a massive black migration to major cities in the North and California. Interestingly enough, you see a cultural process identical to what was happening in Africa at the very same time, called anomie.
Toward the 1960s, black Americans had higher marriage and lower drug usage rates than the white community, and significantly lower crime rates than afterwards, as well as being a community that, when polled, had massive interest in education. However, some shift that I don't fully understand occurred in the 1960s that resulted in an epidemic of crime, family breakdowns, lower education.
In the 1960s, oh god, there's gonna be people that are gonna
usage in the black community. For
say
some
wrong stuff
perspective,
about that.
black people commit 5 times the per capita murder rate of white
Oh.
people, while there's a 26-point gap in educational achievement. In general, black America thrived through individuals and decayed as a collective. Black people are incredibly overrepresented in pop culture and have gained worldwide fame.
Black America has been vital to every element of American culture, however, especially so in music, where black people effectively created the genres of rap, rock, soul, gospel, jazz, funk, among others, even influenced.
What the hell is he showing, like cartoon characters? And he's got like this fox character from the I don't know what's called in English. Cleveland from
Mostly white genres like country. This is an immense credit to the black community and remarkably impressive. It's crazy to see wealthy suburban kids try to act like gangsters.
Straight out of
and
white
I just
privilege.
think, you know, those gangsters would be happy to switch lives with you. I was
Yeah, that
watching a music
happens.
video from the Uyghur Justin Bieber, Ablajan, and he had a black American to give him street cred and rep him up, which is amazing for an area of the world 7,000 miles away from.
Wait,
Watching
what?
a music video from the Uyghur Justin Bieber,
Uyghur?
Ablajan, and he had a black American to give him street cred and rep him up, which is amazing for an area
MC
of the
Kelly.
world 7,000 miles away from the Black Belt. At the same time, the income gap between black and white people
Welfare state destroy the black community. Well, I don't know. This is
grown, and a
politics,
huge
man. I
percentage of
don't
the
know.
black community lives
I
in
mean, I do
declining
know, but I
poverty.
just don't want to.
We know this income gap largely
Like
isn't
maybe-
caused by discrimination.
maybe a
given
little
that
bit.
Nigerian Americans have higher incomes than white Americans, and black people whose ancestors are immigrants from the West Indies or whose ancestors were free before the Civil War are significantly wealthier than the rest of the black community. Studies found that there's no IQ or educational gap between black and white children of American military members raised abroad, but cultural and social factors in America create said differences. I'm going to get my controversial opinion out now, but I don't think the current emphasis and direction that the black community gets preached at by social justice is healthy.
Imagine, just as an example, if you were a psychologist or friends with the metaphorical black community, which was coming out of centuries of oppression and trauma. You would never tell it to build its entire identity around victimhood and say that there's nothing it can do and try to get concessions from the rest of society. You would try to find a way to come to terms with the awful things that had happened and do what was right going forward. For example, I think the glorification of rap culture and the idea that education is seen as playing the white man's game in a lot of modern black culture is extremely counterproductive
I don't know.
and
I don't
healthy for the
know
whole
about
black
this.
society. I have total sympathy for the black community and trusting the rest of America after
Okay,
everything
so what
that's
is this? This is a good book that talks about how the modern woke movement is basically a religion. I don't know.
would be extremely
I mean, if y'all know me, I'm a liberal person, you could say. So I don't know, man. Hot take, yo, hot take for sure. Have you watched Oversimplified Battle of the Hastings? I don't think I have watched it. If your fetus listening to Soulja Boy has the inverse effects of Mozart.
difficult. However, I don't see why the modern wokes aren't
Probably,
just
I
another
don't
brand
know.
of white elites who are trying to use black people for their own gain.
Number 4, Scottish Americans. Scottish
Okay.
Americans are one of the most silent and little known, but also incredibly influential groups in America.
Whatifalthist has some
Most people in this
conservative hot takes in
demographic,
other
when
videos.
asked what their ethnicity is, just say American. Before we start, there are two main regions of Scotland that have cultures so different
Highlands
they
and
basically boil
lowlands,
down to
yep.
different countries. The first is the flat English-speaking lowlands, and the second is the mountainous Gaelic-speaking highlands.
Gosh, the Scottish accent, bro, so hard to understand. I don't have a clue when someone who's Scottish talks to me. I would never go to Scotland just because of that. I wouldn't understand. Immediately, what the fuck, man? I'm sorry, bro. I'm gonna finish this video because that's what we're doing right now. It's one of the war that changed the war that changed the English language. No, I haven't watched it.
Scottish Americans are lowlanders, and even people from the English side of the border who share a very similar culture. This area was overpopulated in the 18th century, and so many moved to Northern Ireland, becoming a majority there only to find more poverty and oppression by English landlords. And then this group, which has become known as the Scots-Irish, immigrated to America in the middle of the 18th century. They settled the Appalachian Mountains, or an area over 1,000 miles long from Pennsylvania to Georgia,
A lot of the upper
and then
south.
migrated west, populating a giant part of the country extending out to New Mexico and Texas. The Scottish cultural influence in America is immense, whether through country music...
Did you see the video? I didn't saw it on stream, but I saw it on Twitter.
The cowboy or redneck culture, combined with the classic stubbornness and freedom-loving that comes from fighting off the English for centuries. Many of America's greatest warriors in a hugely disproportionate part of the military, with figures like Patton...
Is this George Patton? Oh, yeah, well, he just said it. But yeah, George Patton and Andrew Jackson.
And Andrew Jackson and the like are of Scots-Irish ancestry. And this is the only demographic besides the English that have a lot of presidents, whether...
Donald Trump, the Bushes, Reagan, Carter, Ford, Truman, a lot of the late presidents... Roosevelt, Woodrow Wilson, gosh, McKinley, Arthur,
Teddy Roosevelt,
Hayes,
Bill Clinton, Lyndon
Buchanan,
Johnson,
yikes.
Richard Nixon, or Andrew Jackson, just to name a couple. However, the Scots-Irish put very little emphasis on hard work and education, meaning the region suffers horrifying poverty. Drug use, fatherlessness, unemployment, and all the other bad statistics are at unimaginable levels in these
I hate
communities.
Scottish accents.
The book Hillbilly Elegy by
Scottish
J.D. Vance is a very
accents.
sobering
I sometimes
look
can't
at this
understand
community
Northern
from the
English
inside.
people. Wow.
Most of the poorest states in the
And that's
country
coming
are
from
areas
someone
that are
from
majority
England.
Scots-Irish
Wow.
ancestry. The Highland Scottish were a much smaller group during the colonial period, settling in eastern North Carolina, which was an area that was majority Gaelic-speaking into the early 19th century. Scotland in the 18th century experienced a massive technological and social revolution on par with what occurred in Japan, turning a originally poor country into one of the wealthiest and best educated places in the world.
Like it is
when
today.
one looks at the poverty of the earliest Scottish immigrants, it's shocking to look at the later ones who immigrated to America largely in northern cities in a steady but low level, and with their better skill set and education, became prosperous and assimilated rapidly. Number 5. German Americans.
Oh, there's a lot of German
Americans are
Americans.
probably the second largest group of white Americans, and on census results are the largest group of anyone in America, since so many people that are by all accounts plurality English ancestry mark German. The Germans came over in a long period stretching from the colonial era in the 17th century until the World Wars. They first settled predominantly in Pennsylvania, where the Quaker government encouraged German sects that were similar to the Quakers to settle, becoming about 1/3 of Pennsylvania's population. Even today, there's a religious fanatical sect of Germans called the Amish in Pennsylvania, who speak a dialect of German and don't use modern technology, using horses to travel around rather than cars. Until the middle of the 19th century, most Germans came from the Protestant populations in the southwest of Germany, and after the middle of the 19th century, Germans from everywhere, even Eastern European areas, immigrated to America en masse. Germans were divided among hundreds of states, as a chessboard of endless wars and political and religious persecution, with a lot of poverty thrown in, so there were a lot of reasons for Germans to move out. Germans were popular immigrants among the local Americans since they were very hardworking and educated, normally more so than the local Anglo population, and kept their heads down, not
Okay, yeah, I think it's fixed. Sorry about that, guys. I'm so sorry.
Not starting fights or getting involved in local politics. Wherever the Germans immigrate around the world, whether in Eastern Europe or South America, they always settle on the best land. And this happened in America, where the locus of German America became the rich fields of the American Midwest. Germans became the biggest group.
German Americans about to go up massively thanks to the Amish having a birth rate of 4. Damn. It's actually more like 7. Holy
in much
crap.
of the Midwest, dominating the culture in places like
That's a
Cincinnati,
massive
St. Louis,
birth rate.
Chicago, and the like. In areas like Wisconsin or Minnesota, there were whole villages and countrysides of German speakers. However, the Germans went a little bit everywhere, whether going out to the West Coast, especially Oregon, or the American South. Germans had strong communities with schools, fairs, beer halls, newspapers, and the like, enriching everywhere they went, as well as
that's why places like Wisconsin produce a lot of beer and a lot of like German-style beer, so that's pretty nice.
Incredible businessmen, becoming a major driver of the American economy. I mean, just look at companies like Steinway, Hershey, Chrysler, Studebaker, and Rockefeller, to name a few. The German Americans assimilated pretty easily into the Anglo society, with them already being industrious, white, Germanic Protestants, but this was driven into overdrive by the World Wars, making German culture not cool. As my own personal example, I'm of like 10% German ancestry, but I have basically no German culture since all of my German ancestors married an English American practically when they got off the boat from Europe during the 19th century. Number 6, Irish Americans. I'm half Irish, and so this is a culture
I really like
I can
Irish
speak
people.
from personal experience with. Most Irish Americans.
World War I kind of killed German culture in the U.S. True, and it's really sad because who knows what would be today German American culture, and because of that dumbass war, was abandoning Gaelic was probably allowed in the Irish economy to boom for the poorest in Europe to the second highest income in 5 decades. It's still a shame. Yeah, true.
Americans'
A
ancestors
shame,
came
but
over in a
kind of
20-year
worked for
period
them in a
after the
sense,
potato
at least
famine.
economically.
Ireland had become
They're now one of the
incredibly
wealthiest
overpopulated,
countries.
with the Irish living on tiny plots of land, a couple acres, entirely dependent upon the potato. However, a potato blight came by in 1847, resulting in 1/3 of Ireland's population immigrating, 1/3 dying, and the rest staying. Ireland was a brutal place. Most Irish were mired in horrifying poverty and hunger under an English domination that verged on the caste system.
Ibernia, right?
The English forbade the ethnic Irish from voting, owning land, or attending higher education in their own country, while almost all of the land was owned by English landlords that didn't even live in Ireland. The Irish are probably the most stubborn people of all time, and built a massive sense of cultural unity around fighting the English, and would launch hopeless rebellions on a regular basis. Unlike Germany, which was an economic powerhouse, Ireland was a poor backwater, and so the Irish came to America with basically no education or tradable skills. They also came from a tribal warrior herding culture with little understanding of a work ethic or modern society.
Yep.
The Irish clustered around northeastern cities like New York, Boston, or Philadelphia, working menial jobs, living in Irish ghettos. Irish neighborhoods had horrifyingly high crime rates and really bad sanitation. My own ancestors in Jersey City were policemen, which was basically the best job you could get. Even today, Irish Americans are the poorest large group of white Americans. The Irish had a strong sense of charisma and...
Ireland's population still hasn't recovered from the famine. 4 million nowadays and 8 million before the blight. Wow. Irish population today is the same as just before the blight. Wow. I have Irish American relatives. My great grandma was Irish while she moved to the UK. Some of her relatives moved to the US. She was one of 20 kids.
And cultural identity, which meant they often gained political power and were successful in roles like showmen. Irish political bosses dominated northeastern cities and government jobs like the police or bureaucracy. The Irish had no financial or business skills, and as an example, although my Irish family's been in America since the potato famine, my father was the first person to have a job in the private sector. The Irish integrated into the rest of American society after World War II, moving out into the suburbs, becoming less Catholic, and the like. My boomer father would say, "I'm the last generation of Irish, and you're just an American." However, even today, Irish Americans are by far the group of white Americans with the most ethnic pride. And if we ever need to rebel against a fascist state, I'm sure the rebellion will be spearheaded by the Irish. Number 7. Italian Americans.
Oh, yeah.
The invention of the steamship meant that oceanic travel became much cheaper, which meant that nations further away from America that America didn't trade with so much, like South and Eastern Europe, were able to migrate by the million to America
Greeks,
at the turn
Slavs,
between the 19th to 20th
Italians.
centuries. The biggest of these groups were the Italians, who possibly saw one of the largest diasporas ever in this era, with most immigrating inside Europe or to South America.
And South America.
Like Scotland, Italy's divided into two areas that are totally different: a prosperous and industrial north and a poor and rural south.
America had a small, prosperous North Italian community, many of whom immigrated to California, and one of which founded the Bank of Italy, which later became the Bank of America.
Southern Italy was a poor, backward area. It was inhabited by subsistence farmers who were barely getting by with an oppressive nobility
Come on,
on
please
top
watch
of
it,
them.
bro. You gotta
Unlike
wait,
the Irish,
man.
there was
We're gonna
basically
finish
no
this
social
video
trust,
first.
with people never really trusting or working with people outside their immediate family. This was a society where parents told their children not to play with non-family members in case they couldn't be trusted. Like the Irish, they had very few practicable skills, and so became unskilled laborers clustering in northeastern cities, even more clustering around the greater New York City
I'm actually an
area.
Italian
Italian
expat.
laborers were brought
That's
over
awesome,
by
brother.
contractors who would bring them into neighborhoods and
Fun
labor
fact, there are a
groups
lot
of
of
people from the
Croatians
same
living in
hometowns as them.
Argentina.
And most Italian immigrants, in fact, returned to Italy.
Yeah, there's like a phrase in Argentina that Argentinian people used that say, us, the Argentines, come from the boats, meaning that most of the Argentinian population comes from Europe, Italy, Croatia, Germany, even Scandinavia.
With savings from America. The Italians lacked
That's
the
cool,
aggression,
man.
unity,
That's
and
awesome that you're
charismatic culture
Italian,
of the
Italian
Irish, but made up with it with work ethic and patience. Although the Italians have a reputation for being mobsters and criminals, that's only really the parasitic mafia elite, while the average Italian was incredibly law-abiding. Americans were often shocked to see how Italians would live in horrible conditions, working long hours, and save practically every cent they earned. Italian Americans had a good business sense, opening up small shops like restaurants, tailors, and the like. However, their main weakness was their distrust of education and strong family collectives.
I know the amount of times I'm comparing the Irish to the Italians
Huge
is
family
egregious,
culture.
but they're similar and yet different enough, being in the same cities at the same times in the same occupations, that they're really useful mirrors for the other. If you're leaving an Irish family, your parents will ask you why the fuck you didn't leave earlier. If you're leaving an Italian family, your mother will burst into tears and ask why you're betraying the family.
Yeah.
Higher education and working in organizations like the church, government, and the like were viewed with immense suspicion. Whether with the Catholic Church, police, or local government, the Italians worked in institutions dominated by the Irish. Like the Irish, who they mixed with a tremendous amount, the Italians pulled themselves out of the northeastern ghettos after World War II. The Italians are now one of the most prosperous groups of white Americans, probably due to their concentration in the wealthy New York area, but also their good business sense. Even today, there's a strong sense of Italian American pride. Number 8, Jewish Americans.
Come on, when is he gonna get to the Mexican?
At the exact same time as the Italians and settled in the exact same areas, being northeastern cities, especially New York, but the Jews also developed big communities in
California,
Los Angeles,
Florida.
Chicago, and Florida.
American Jews are heavily from the Ashkenazi Jews of Eastern Europe, with the highest concentration coming from Eastern Poland and modern Western Ukraine,
And
which was an
Belarus.
area called the Pale that the Tsar had designated Jews could own land in. This population of Eastern European Jews was completely cut off from modern
Oh,
Western
from Naples.
civilization,
Nice.
being
My
completely
mother loved
immersed in
Naples
religious
when she went.
fundamentalism and Torah law, and their communities called ghettos were often literally worlds unto themselves that were entirely Jewish while totally surrounded by Gentiles. Eastern Europe was experiencing acute overpopulation at the turn of the 20th century, and the Russian government was also going on a massive assimilation effort, with Europe experiencing a remarkable
Yikes.
revitalization of anti-Semitism. Russia's Jews left by the million upon realizing that things would only get worse. Upon arriving in America, they clashed with the previous German Jewish population. Unlike Eastern Europe, the German Jews were completely assimilated into Western civilization and were an assimilated part of American society, looking down upon the recent Eastern European Jewish migrants, who normally came in complete poverty and lived in horrible slums. The story of the Jews upwards from menial labor is pretty similar to that
People
of
seem
the
to
Irish
forget
and
the
Italians
Sephardic
before,
Jews. That's
but with
also
one
true,
major difference.
unfortunately.
That the Jews had a much stronger emphasis on education. Inside the Jewish community, the social elite were the rabbis.
I mean, in places like Spain, Sephardic Jews played.
So Jewish culture had a tradition of education.
Have played big roles.
The Jews generally kept their heads down and then sent their kids to the best schools. After World War II, the importance of education in American society went up tremendously, with the right college being the road to wealth, and the Jews thrived in that world. The Jews became one of the wealthiest groups in America, and the wealthiest large group of white Americans. At the same time, the Jews' lengthy history of being merchants back in Europe helped them a tremendous amount in America's capitalist society. Jews rose to positions of leadership in basically everything, especially Hollywood and business. I think a really fun thing is that...
We've got Bernard Sanders and Ben Shapiro. Come on, bro. Why would you do that? You know, are you trying to get a fucking huge
the
debate?
Leadership of both the right and the left now in America is heavily Jewish, and to think Jews are only 5% of America's population. The Jews assimilated to American culture, so much so that most American Jews are only loosely actually religiously Jewish. But Jewish American culture is as American as any other subculture. It's just also Jewish. The Jews have thrived in America while at the same time facing more description really than any other group of white Americans. But also in reality, America has been better to the Jews than any other country I can think of in history. This is partially since race is a big binary in America, not religion. But also the Jews have never faced pogroms, legal discrimination, and the like in America. The fact that Jews are such a big proponent of the social justice movement, styling themselves as the oppressors now in society, must mean something. Number 9. Asian Americans. Asian Americans are probably the greatest success story of any group in America. They're the wealthiest race in America, only behind the Jews in income. Asians have immigrated to America in several different batches, with the first being from Japan and China in the late 19th century, in some cases to build railroads. Both Japan and China were experiencing incredible overpopulation that made life difficult, while China...
So you've got, I'm guessing the Russian bear. Well, yeah, there you go, Russia. China, dead. Austria, I'm guessing this is England. Germany right here.
America, massive political problems. Japan. In both cases, both immigrant populations came from certain communities back home. For example, in China, a single town in the province of Guangzhou, providing a majority of immigrants.
Many Jews from Poland and Russia
that
came
town
to the
became
UK
the wealthiest
in the 19th
century.
East London has a long Jewish history.
I didn't know that. At the end of the 19th century,
like
America had a race panic in which it closed off its borders to Asian immigration entirely for the next 60 years. You had a large Chinese male population in California that died lonely as bachelors. Since they couldn't return to China, they couldn't bring Chinese women over, and interracial marriage was banned. Asians faced horrifying legal discrimination in West Coast states, being banned from owning land, working in many industries, and that doesn't even include just random racism that people and private institutions carried out. Dry cleaners don't exist in China, but the Chinese learned to do dry cleaning since it was one of the few industries open to them. The absolute worst was during World War II when almost all Japanese Americans were interned in concentration camps for the war, with their property taken from them. One of the saddest things about this was that Japanese Americans were actually extremely patriotic, and there was no evidence for sedition or treason on their part. Most of the Asians who came to America did so in total poverty. They shared a lot with the Italians in having a tremendous ability to save money and work long hours in horrible conditions, a good sense for petty business with law-abiding populations that had predatory mafias on top. The greatest strength they had was their strong communities that would support each other, helping raise money for community businesses, making schools and the like, alongside their extremely tight-knit families. Imagine you've got a tight-knit family and you're trying to start a business, knowing that your son or your cousin will work for free at your corner store until you get profits is really what you need. In poor black or brown communities, the merchant classes who run the local shops are normally Asian. However, like the Jews, they came from cultures that prized education.
And even here in Mexico, a lot of the business owners happen to be people from Korea, from Japan, from China. It's not a huge phenomenon, but it's very interesting.
In many Confucian societies like Korea or China, the ruling classes were chosen by those who got the best test results.
Have to wait,
After World War II, when education became the road to wealth, the Asian community who had saved up money from their dry cleaners, restaurants, or gardening businesses sent their children to college to become CEOs, professors, or movie directors. Most Asian Americans came after the 1960s when the U.S. opened up to non-white immigration and saw a massive flood of immigrants from Korea, China, Southeast Asia, and India. With the exception of wealthy immigrants who just immediately entered the American upper class, these immigrants normally followed a similar trajectory to the previous ones, of starting off as menial workers or minor peddlers, then putting their kids through college, having them enter the elite. Indians saw a similar trajectory, except that America pulled from the wealthier educated classes in India like doctors or coders, thus resulting in an easier transition into American society. Asians, for being 5% of the population, are totally overrepresented among wealthier, influential Americans.
Yeah, they do have...
Number 10, Hispanic
Oh,
Americans.
yeah.
Hispanic America is simultaneously the oldest and...
Oh, I'm afraid what he's gonna say. I hope he doesn't throw shit to us.
most recent thing in American history.
Isn't the first city in the U.S. Founded in Florida by Spain? And like Hispanic communities in New Mexico, Colorado, being very old. So it is part of American culture. A lot of people say that Hispanic culture is very different, but I think it's very integrated to the U.S.
The first European settlements in America were by the Spanish in places like California, Florida, or
New
Texas.
Mexico.
However, those were largely the frontiers and edges of the Spanish world, while
Best for
the
last.
massive wave of Hispanic immigrants has taken their place over the last few decades.
Yeah.
There have been Hispanics in America since the 16th century, but their numbers were pretty small. In the state of Texas, an area larger than France, there were less than 2,000 Hispanics at the time of America's conquest, and afterwards the U.S. structured their colonization in such a way to make it very easy to dispossess
Santa
local
Fe and
Hispanic
Agustin are the
settlers.
oldest,
Even in
both
states of the
Spanish.
Mexican border,
True.
there was a Hispanic cultural undercurrent, but it was peripheral. There had been a couple different waves of Mexican immigration to America before the middle of the 20th century, but they were largely transitory, as people would come in to work for a bit and then move back, or were forced to move back across the border by American authorities. After 1980 and until 2008, a massive...
Whoa, holy fuck. Number of Mexican immigrants and their share of the total U.S. immigration population. So 1930s, it's where we see a little bit of a boom, and it's in the 1940s where
wave of Mexicans immigrated into America across the southern border. This was driven partially by low wages caused by population
Slavic
growth
or
back
Iranian
in Mexico,
Americans.
as well as the disbalances caused by the drug trade, which effectively turned Mexico into a narco state. Mexican immigrants largely worked menial jobs in stuff like restaurants, agriculture, manufacturing, and the like. Due to America's complicated immigration structure, this was largely illegal, with the immigrants living a strange double life where they couldn't rely on the police, healthcare system, or vote. However, the immigrants provided cheap labor that undercut American wages, and so the American elite really didn't do much to stop it. The Mexicans were also willing to work long hours, which first-world snowflake Americans weren't. The legal problems gave employers more power over the immigrants anyway. A majority of Hispanics in America are Mexicans, largely from the north and center of the country. Mexicans have become a plurality in the Southwest, with there being more Hispanics than whites in California by over 10 points. There's also a lot of Cubans in Florida, clustering around Miami, which is a wealthy community of upper-class origin that got kicked out by the communists, as well as a large Puerto Rican community based out of New York City, that's several times the actual population of Puerto Rico. For nearly 15 years, more Americans have been immigrating to Mexico than Mexicans immigrating to America, but Central Americans are still crossing the border in a large number.
Oh, wow.
Interestingly enough, you don't see income
So what?
ranges...
Did he just mention that there are more Americans moving to Mexico than more Mexicans moving to the U.S.? Is that really like a thing?
Among Hispanics that have much to do with race. For example, darker-skinned Mexicans or Dominicans are wealthier than the mostly white Puerto Ricans. Much to the shock of isolationists, Hispanics have assimilated at a remarkably fast speed than the rest of American society. They've moved up the economic totem pole, now being wealthier than black people, and even along the Mexican border assimilate very fast into American culture. Even in places along the Mexican border, with cities with Spanish names like San Diego or Laredo, the problem that Hispanic parents are worried about is their kids not knowing Spanish and losing their Mexican culture, not them not learning English and becoming American enough. The fact that we're seeing Hispanics vote for conservative candidates at higher and higher rates suggests something. At the same time, the fact that both Hispanics and Asians marry out of their ethnicities or race at over 40% every generation suggests assimilation is complete.
Whatifalthist, and thanks for watching. If you enjoyed that video, please like, comment, subscribe, or stay tuned for additional content. Or alternatively, check out my Pillar, Pearl, or Patreon. As always, thanks so much for watching, stay tuned for future videos, and have a great day.
Well, that was pretty nice. Holy crap, it was long, but it was super nice. I really enjoyed it. Okay, so here's the thing, okay? Do you guys, because there's AC Alvarez who wants to watch the San Marino episode. How do you guys feel about that? Okay, because I know there were a lot of people who wanted to watch a lot of things, but right now the stream is kind of long. Maybe we can do 2 videos. He forgot the Dutch Americans. That is also true. One of the first groups to come to America, actually. New Amsterdam wasn't New York was New Amsterdam, actually. He forgot, I think, a lot of groups. It'd be nice if he did a part 2, you know, including Iranian Americans, Arab Americans, Dutch Americans, Swedish Americans, who also had a part of the U.S. So there were many groups missing, but I think he overall grabbed the biggest ethnicities, you know? Yeah, okay, we can do... Yeah, exactly. Geography now and real life lore. Perfect. Okay, if you guys are okay with that. Geography now, San Marino, the small country, but probably very beautiful.
Imagine you're a dude running away from some guy trying to kill you. You escape pirates. You start a new life on the beach. Then, just when beach life is going great, some crazy lady you never met claims that you her baby daddy and you just left without paying no damn child support. So you run away.
I kind of want it
mountains,
as well,
build
but
a
he should
fortress,
push,
and a bunch of other runaways
push him for
in a
spamming.
similar situation to yours.
Yeah, that's true. The spamming was not cool, bro, all right? Like, don't spam next time. We'll watch anything, but just don't spam it. You know, be nice about it.
And you become a community in a very butchered, condensed
yeah,
format.
exactly. Kind of
That's
impossible to
basically
do
how this place became
everything
a
at
country.
once.
Welcome to the world's best hiding spot, keeping it down low, San Marino.
Just to mention, because there were also people wanting the war that changed the English language, probably gonna do a video about it. And the reason is all the oversimplified videos get demonetized. So if I added oversimplified to this stream, the entire stream is gonna get demonetized. So I would rather do a single video, so that video gets demonetized, right?
Hey everybody, I'm your host Barbs. Welcome to the 5th smallest country in the world, the oldest sovereign country in the world, with the oldest constitution and the smallest republic. Yeah, you guys have less land area, but you also have over 166,000 square miles.
One of the 5th smallest, yet it is the oldest sovereign nation. Wow.
Miles of ocean territory, so...
Oh, well, I actually won this round.
Yeah. Congrats, Nauru. Oh, and as you guys know, this video was shot during the COVID-19 pandemic times, so in compliance with social distancing practices, this video was shot in my...
Okay, 2020. Y'all remember the beginning of the pandemic?
Caleb and Jillian live here, so obviously they are quarantining with me. They
Seems like
videos.
forever.
Art is one of my closest neighbors. He is within walking distance, so he'll be a regular. Also, we are limiting our guest host to 1 a week, and this week, it will be Hannah. How you doing, Hannah? What is that you are holding on to? And
this week on Geography Now, we have merch.
And where can you get all this at, Hannah?
GeographyNow.com. I'm going to leave the shirt on.
Oh, we got the infographic show on Gandhi. That's true. It's third. Yeah, we'll do it. We'll do it. We'll do it as well.
It's good. Should we match the whole time?
If you want, sure, yeah.
Listen, guys, we take huge precautions.
Okay,
with
yeah,
face
I think
masks.
we can
We have
skip this whole thing.
It grew into the small, hard-to-find microstate that it is today. Let's find it on the globe now, shall we?
Very small microstate.
San Marino, sometimes called the most serene republic, is kind of like a miracle country. It was made from a bunch of people trying to escape persecution. And like they've survived almost 2 millennia of dodging almost every major battle and war because the aggressors were like,
"Aw, you're so adorable and not
Napoleon,
you know
Pope
what? Go
Clement.
ahead. I don't need to attack. Stay independent."
In any case, they've held it together and kept their sovereignty locked down in the hills. And here's where they are. First of all, the country is completely landlocked within the country of Italy, straddling the borders of the Emilia-Romagna and Marche regions of Italy. At only 24 square miles or 61 square kilometers, they are the 3rd smallest country in Europe after the Vatican and Monaco and have no former border control with Italy. The country is divided into 9 municipalities, or castelli, meaning castles, and the small capital with only about 4,000 people, named, like the country, San Marino, is located in the San Marino municipality.
Is there a capital? I mean, it's such a small country. Why would there be a capital city?
The capital sits on the western slope of the highest point of the country with incredibly narrow hairpin turn roadways and a ridge trail that goes to the other two famous towers of San Marino. If you want to get there without driving, a good alternative would be taking the aerial cableway that starts in Borgo Maggiore at the bottom and goes up 166 meters to the top. As a landlocked nation, of course, they have no seaports. They do have one incredibly small private airstrip in Torraccia, but for people wanting to take commercial flights, everything must be done through Rimini's Federico Fellini International,
And then you
about
gotta
15
drive.
kilometers away on the coast in Rimini, Italy. This airport works with San
Yeah, that I know, right? Marino sounds like marine, which, you know, for us, or, you know, French, Latin speaking people, sounds like ocean or water. But no ocean, no water. Only microstates are a pretty cool concept, but the amount of tribalism which would result would get really ugly real fast. Yeah, it wouldn't be good to have a lot of them, I think. They escaped persecution from Diocletian, the Roman Emperor of Rome, during the early 300s. So they are old.
San Marino and
small
does
and old.
actually
Wow.
have a granted customs
Do they
for
speak
San
Italian?
Marino that visitors can use and report to. From there, the only way in
Probably.
is by road
Right.
on one of the many entrances from all sides of the surrounding Italian border. The busiest one being the Italian SS-72 highway into Dogana. Keep in mind, the country actually used to be even smaller, but in 1320, the community of Chiesa Nuova joined, and in 1463,
1320.
4 other communities joined: Faetano, Fiorentino, Montegiardino, and Serravalle. Since then, the border has not changed, and they've stayed the same size from then on. Small country,
Wow.
it's got everything it needs. So by now, you're probably wondering,
Okay, for real though, how on earth did they avoid not getting absorbed by Italy?
well, for one, as the story goes, St. Marinus, or San Marino, was a simple
Oh,
Christian stonemason
Saint
from the island
Marinus.
of Rab in the Dalmatian coast. Back in those days, the Roman emperors were actively killing Christians, and
There you
Diocletian
go.
had a target
Oh,
on Dalmatia.
Diocletian,
San Marino
okay.
ran to Rimini, started a whole new life on the beach. Then some crazy lady, or ladies, depending on which version of the story you heard, claimed he was
They
their
speak a
estranged
dialect of
husband that
Italian.
left them.
Okay,
Annoyed by
gotcha.
this, he ran to the mountains and built a monastery as a hermit. From there, other persecuted Christians heard of this mountain safe haven, and they began to congregate there and built a fort. Originally, all this land belonged to Lady Felicita, a Roman noblewoman. One day, her son got sick, and St. Marinus supposedly had the gift of healing people and healed her son. In gratitude, she gave the mountain to him and his community. So according to the story, that's basically how the country started. Before he died, though, St. Marinus' last words to his people were, I leave you free from both men.
Wait, what?
Most people assume he was referencing the Pope and the Emperor. This was kind of like the
Wow,
inspirational
okay.
driving
Kinda
force that led the
confusing,
people of San Marino to maintain their sovereignty. Eventually, they wrote...
And they took it very seriously. Very surprising, you know. Also, like Liechtenstein and Luxembourg became independent from Germany. San Marino became
their constitution, the oldest one on Earth,
remain
the
independent.
Leges Statutae Republicae Sancti Marini, which is actually 6 books written in Latin in the 16th century.
Wow.
Yeah, San Marino. It's not just a community of farmers in the
old,
random
yeah.
hills. It's a community driven by the inspiration of a saint
Saint
that encouraged
Marinus.
them to hold on to the reins of their own domain. And it worked. Anyway, if you decide to visit San Marino, some of the top places to check out: the Basilica of San Marino, the Liberty Square and statue, the Sacello di San Marino. If you want collector's coins or stamps on your passport, go to the
Tourism.
tourism office. The Crossbow Quarry Cavern, Monte Cereto Park and Adventure Park, the Museum of Vampires and Werewolves, Old Serravalle Castle, the Passage of Witches, the Museum of Weapons in Cesta, the Torture Museum, the Museum of Curiosities, the Ancient Arms Museum, the San Francis Museum, the State Museum, and the most
I mean, there's a lot of things to do, surprisingly.
notable site of the country, the Torre Guaita, and her 2
kinda
sisters,
shocked.
Cesta and the smallest Montale, which Montale is not open to the public. And everywhere you go in the country, you see statues and tributes
Saint
to San Marino
Marinus.
himself. See how many you can find. So yeah, as you can see, San Marino is a myriad
They love
of
their
quirky
founder.
and traditional sites. No idea why they have a vampire museum, but it works. Let them have their fun. In any
Yeah.
case, within those 23 square miles, 61 square kilometers, they still have quite a few natural sites. Which brings us to...
I'm guessing that huge mountain is a big one.
Now, we've done microstates on this channel
Pretty
before,
cool,
but
yeah.
When you have a very limited amount of space, you're probably going to have to find ways to make money that don't
I wish there was an Italian state which spoke classical Latin conversationally. That'd be cool. I guess
require
inconvenient,
massive
but
farm
cool
fields.
for
San
sure.
Marino has their own way of playing the game. First of all, the country is entirely mountainous, located in the Apennine mountain chain that creates the spine of the Italian peninsula extending all the way north to south. This mountain chain is essentially part of the smaller thrust fault lines that push from the Adriatic lithosphere or microplate, which explains why sometimes minor tremors and earthquakes might occur, but nothing too serious. As mentioned, in the center, where the capital lies, is the limestone mass and highest point of the country, Mount Titano, at about 740 meters high. From these hills flow many small creeks and rivers, like
Never
the Ausa,
large.
Marano, and Fiumicello rivers, and bisecting the country in the southwest side is the appropriately named San Marino River. The country does not have any major natural inland bodies of water. The closest thing would probably be Lago de Faetano, a small artificial body of water used for sport fishing near the border of the Faetano area. Otherwise, as you can see in the valleys, farms and ranches dominate the remainder of the landscape. Fun fact,
So
because of
crazy that such a small country can work pretty much just fine.
Mount Titano, sometimes San Marino is also called the Titanic Republic. San Marino is a country that knows how to handle things. They have no external debt, they actually have a budget surplus, and they get somewhere around 3.2 million tourists a year, about 100 times their entire population. And despite agriculture not being
They're fucking killing
real
it.
principal industry, with their limited area, about 3/4 of their land is given to permanent agriculture, and about 17% of their land is arable. And with that, it is now time for my triple shot of espresso break. Usually Noah comes in, but Noah obviously can't be here. 'Cause we only
Pandemic.
have one guest host, Hannah. So that means Art is gonna have to fill in for today. Yeah.
Hey guys. Now for San Marino, the real money comes from three main sources. Banking and finance, the largest company in the country, is Agricola, as well as business and tourism. About half the economy in itself is based on tourism, making about 1/4 of the GDP. And sales tax is actually half of what it is in Italy. This is why so many people love coming here for shopping. Especially stamp and coin enthusiasts for the rare collectible San Marino lira, discontinued after switching to the euro, even though they're not even part of the EU. In addition, if you go to the outskirts along the country's border...
Okay, so they're part of the Eurozone, but they don't use they are not part of the European Union, which that's the case for a lot of microstates, right? Kind of weird how Latin doesn't have any accent marks, but every language derived from it has dialects. Yeah. I saw a video of, I think, an American going to Rome and speaking classical Latin to random people. How did that went, maybe there was like an elder who was like, yeah, I understand it.
You'll often see massive warehouses or factories owned by outside companies. This is because San Marino only taxes corporate profit at 19%, 5% capital gains, and 13% withholding tax interest. Contrast that with Italy's 24%, which is higher than the EU's average around 22%.
I like this guy.
In addition, San
Andorra.
Marino is known to have some quirky items that are actually otherwise illegal to buy outside the country, like guns and weaponry like swords and crossbows, things that can kill you. Why am I thinking about murder?
Because we just talked about weapons that could murder you.
Oh, that's right. San Marino actually has the highest rate of car ownership in the world, and it is the only country with more cars than people. Are they rich over there?
It was like Monaco. Remember we did the Monaco country?
Yeah.
Not as rich as Monaco, though.
Otherwise,
Yeah,
within the limited hills
Monaco
and
is
cliffs, you can still find
a
some
lot
pretty
more
cool
wealthy.
wildlife. And with that, we are going to go to Gary Harlow. He's actually not here right now.
His name is Luke Rainieri, I think. That's his name.
I need a hat.
Probably gonna have to check it out. A great idea, right? I want to see how much
Marino's
land
a
the
tiny nation,
Chopper
but
will
by
get.
no means devoid of nature.
That'd be interesting. An interesting idea. Maybe if the video is not very long, we can probably watch it. I probably wouldn't get a lot of Latin,
No, it's terrible, Hannah.
For one, you'll find animals that are common throughout Italy and southern Europe. Their abundance of grasslands, rivers, and creeks give a home to mammals like cross foxes, hedgehogs, horseshoe bats, otters, and the least weasel, known as the smallest carnivore on the planet. Don't let the little guy's red coat with white belly and small, cute, stubby
fucking
snout fool you.
adorable.
When it's time for mating season, they have some of the most violent courtships documented in the mammal world. In addition, about 96 species of birds can be
Badass.
found migrating and nesting, everything from swans, European
El Salvador,
honey
Panama,
buzzards,
and Ecuador
peregrine
uses the
falcons,
US dollar.
barn
That's
owls,
true.
and spotted woodpeckers. And that's all for Gary Harlow.
Thank you, Hannah Harlow, or whatever your
Yeah,
name is.
fuck
for
you,
this
Australian.
segment. I honestly don't care. And now we finish off this segment as we always
I don't
do
care.
with what? With food, baby, food.
Do you like food art?
Yeah, I do. I love food. Now, as you might suspect, San Marino's cuisine is very similar to that of Italy's. Of course, you will find pasta and pizza around every corner. But they do have their own specialties as well. Cappelletti, passatelli, ciambella, bustrengo, San Marino style lasagna, and pentalacchia liquor. And these cakes are sold everywhere, but they're just kind of like a, gimmick snack thing for tourists. And many might consider the national dish piadina. That looks pretty good. It looks like an Italian taco. Yes, even a small country can have their own charm and flair, like the people and their culture, which brings us to
the demographics.
Thank you for filling in our.
Guessing very Italian, right?
Hand sanitizer. Wash your hands. All right, you're
not that dirty, but
you always will be to me. By the way, the people here are called Samarinese. There's no N, not San Marinese. Samarinese, 2 N's.
Samarinese.
Throughout history, the Samarinese have had a saying, Notia noi ignoti agli altri. Know ourselves, but unknown to others. The Samarinese are kind of like proud of their distinct identity, rooted in unfamiliarity. In any case, this is how you break down the population. The country is made up of about 34,000 people and is the 5th smallest country in population on Earth. The country is predominantly Samarinese at about 86%. Whereas the remaining population, about 1,400 inhabitants, or about 14% of the country, are foreign-born, mostly from Italy and Romania, as well as other parts of Europe. Keep in mind, there are about 12,000 Samarinese nationals in diaspora, mostly in Italy, France, and the USA. They use the euro as their currency. They use the types C, F, and L plug outlets. And
I want to look. Okay, sorry, this is kind of weird, but I want to look how the passport looks. One of the rarest passports in the world. Oh. República de San Marino. So it looks good, Beautiful passport. Kind of like the American passport in a way. Pasaporto. I guess that's an old one. Okay. Just wanted to check, all right?
On the right side of the road. Now, when it comes to identity, although yes, the national language of San Marino is Italian.
Technically Italian.
Samarinese people have Italian ancestry.
Okay,
regardless,
gotcha.
Do not call these people Italians. They are very proud of their Samarinese heritage. I mean, when you're part of an exclusive club with less people than the maximum capacity during peak season at Disneyland, you're kind of special. By the way, as a Californian, I gotta say, Disneyland is so overrated. Don't even bother with that place.
It's not.
Way better.
It's
anyway,
nice,
for what it's
bro.
worth, being Samarinese comes with a lot of unique traditions and customs. For one, the majority of the country, at somewhere around 97%, claim to be affiliated with the Catholic Church.
Whoa.
I mean, shocker, they were founded by a saint. However, there is no Episcopal See in San Marino, and they actually fall under the Diocese of Montefeltro in Italy. If you don't know what that is, basically the Catholic Church kind of like organizes their churches in worldwide districts called dioceses. It's confusing. Even I don't get it. And I actually have an uncle who's a Franciscan friar under the Capuchin order. Anyway, San Marino is also noted for their unique government.
Oh, God. I don't know why I thought that was so funny.
Worldwide districts called dioceses. It's confusing. Even I don't get it. And I actually have an uncle who's a Franciscan.
I don't know why I thought that was so funny. I know, maybe the way he said it, the way his uncle looks with his like Franciscan clothes. I don't know. I just thought it was funny.
Franciscan friar under the Capuchin order. Anyway, San Marino is also noted for their unique government system. They are one of only 3 diarchies in the world, as in countries that have 2 official heads of state. And they've been doing it since 1243. These heads of state are known as captain regents. They are chosen by council members that are voted in every 5 years. The captain regents must be at least 25 years old, and their terms last only 6 months, which makes it the shortest head of state term limit on Earth. They are allowed to have unlimited terms afterwards, but they have to wait 3 years until they can be reelected. And this also means San Marino has had the highest number of female heads of state out of any country in the world. Anyway, what makes San Marino distinct culturally? Well, that brings us to Random Hannah with culture stuff.
Alright guys, it is good to be back. San Marino is a country that definitely honors its traditional medieval side. In July, during the Revocation Festival, you can see the flag throwing performances everywhere. And when a new set of captain
I don't know, I
regents
just
are
don't
voted
like
in
Hannah
either
that much.
April
I don't
or
know why.
October, they have the investor
She looks like a nice human being, but I don't feel it. I don't feel her. I don't feel her vibe.
Feast of San Marino. Samarinese people are also known for kind of being weapon enthusiasts, hence why they have so many weapon shops. Their specialty the crossbow.
America.
That's so cool. They even have a crossbow corps
America
of about
likes-
80
America
members
proves.
that train and dress up in medieval clothing and perform regularly at festivals year-round. For sports, this is where things get a little interesting. In Europe, whenever San Marino plays football or soccer, it's kind of like,
Yes! Yeah!
but not for the reasons you'd think.
I am so gonna win money by betting against them.
See, their national soccer/football team debuted in 1990, and since then has only won one game against Liechtenstein in 2004. This makes them officially the worst team, not only in Europe, but in the
Wow.
whole world. Their starting lineups often have few actual professional players, and they even had an accountant as their goalie once.
Oh boy. I mean, can you blame them? Right to bear crossbows. Have you ever wondered why every religious monk tradition is based off self-deprivation and self-inflicted pain? We're about to get philosophical here. I haven't. But it's true though, and it applies to like a lot of religions from Buddhism to Christianity. I don't know. Okay, here's my theory about that, and I think that's a good question. I don't want to say something stupid, but maybe it's because it seems something very pure to, you have the mental will to like not have sex, for example, or not drink alcohol. And like that mental will is required to be a monk. I don't know. That's like my theory, but it's definitely very interesting. Strange, my opinion. Oh yeah, for sure.
However, what they lack in footwork, they make up in...
I mean, never underestimate a soccer team. Iceland, that has 300,000 people, went to the World Cup, which was amazing for a country that small, in my
Their
opinion.
baseball team is much better. They've been champions in Italy 4 times, won 2 Italian Cups, and 3 European Championship leagues. In addition, they have a
Baseball.
strong
Interesting.
passion for motorcycle racing and often perform very well at Grand Prix events, mostly practicing at the Rimini Coast racetrack. And finally, Sammarinese people are lovers of classical art and music. Me too. For classic music, these two composers are highly
Wow.
regarded figures. You know what I just realized? This is kind
In
of
some
the
religions,
music
you can't
segment.
eat
I
certain
just took over
foods.
Keith's segment. I think I won the feud. Keith, haha.
Okay, so I think it's because of Jesus was in a lot of pain, so they tried to relate to Jesus by causing pain to themselves. Probably very true, and probably has to do a lot with that. Same with Buddhist and Buddha, though. Oh yeah, the Buddha was also like suffered. He meditated for like years, trying to achieve the same enlightenment.
I guess that's it for you now, Hannah. Social distancing push.
I got the mic.
All right, and with that, it's time for the history segment. We already kind of explained the origins of this country, so let's just kind of skip forward.
I think it's
to
about
the
the
15th century.
you
1463,
sacrifice
the country gains its
worldly
last new
things,
territories, which are the
so
current
you're
border.
closer to God.
1503 was taken
Okay.
over by this guy for about 6 months. 1543, this dude tried to take over but got lost in fog. Occupied again in 1739 by the papal governor.
Wait, what?
Tried to take over but got lost in fog. Occupied
Got lost. I don't know why that was also so funny.
again in 1739 by the papal governor of Ravenna.
Sorry, I have to
He was
watch it
taken
again.
over by this guy for about 6 months. 1543, this dude tried to take over but got lost in fog. Occupied again in 1739 by the papal governor of Ravenna. Napoleonic years, Napoleon actually kind of liked San Marino and offered to extend their territory, but they declined. During the Union years, Garibaldi and his wife took refuge in San Marino. He promised they could stay independent after Italy became united. World War I, World War II, they tried to stay as neutral as possible, but still got bombed. They actually became communist for a few years. They joined the UN, OECD, and the Council of Europe. Tourism and sales of cheesy souvenirs skyrocketed.
Yeah,
And here we are
I like
today.
that,
Some of the
Thomas.
most
That was a
well-known
really
famous
good
people of this country that
theory.
you guys suggested I mention include composer, playwright, and bishop Francesco Maria Marini, 60s and 70s icon pop star Little Tony, Olympian Alessandra Pirelli, 4-time Eurovision singer Valentina Monetta,
Wow.
Captain Regent Assunta Tina Mo.
Should I react to Eurovision? I don't. I know that's like a huge thing in Europe, but I just never I never even watched the video related to Eurovision. I don't even know what exactly it is.
Boni, these soccer players, Marco Machina, Simone Pacini, and Davide Simoncini, Grand Prix motorcyclists, Manuel Poggiali, and Alex De Angelis. So there you go. Not bad for a country that has fewer people than Bob Saget has had family members on his TV career. And speaking of family, that brings us to...
friend zone. Of course,
Now, as we
Italy
kind
gonna
of
play a
already
huge
explained,
role.
much of San Marino's very existence depended greatly on their ability to avoid and get away from conflict. They've always had to kind of talk their way out of trouble. I like what San Marinese geography Diego says. He says, "I think this is maybe the most beautiful thing about us, the victory of words over arms." That's cool, I like that. But that doesn't mean San Marino is a total hermit. They definitely roll with their crew. For one, they have 3 embassies, including the Military Order of Malta, which is not actually a real country, but it kind of is, but that's a whole other story, and 8 honorary consulates within their country, and over 85 non-resident embassies and consulates abroad. In addition, they actually have a very interesting connection to all the other microstates of Europe, like Andorra, Liechtenstein, Monaco, and Malta. All these countries take part in the Games of Smaller States of Europe, which also include larger small states like Luxembourg, Cyprus, Montenegro, and Iceland. Even the Vatican is invited and set to possibly take part for the first time in 2021. Generally,
what? Could you imagine that? Geography Now made a video on Eurovision. Probably should watch that. Not God in particular, but just towards the pureness of existence. Lithuania took the big W in 2006 Eurovision, and nothing will change that.
other Catholic nations like to nod their
Should
heads.
probably
at San
watch
Marino
the video
when they see
he
the
did on
pride and
Eurovision.
perseverance of a tenacious little guy that outlasted all of them. Croatia especially has a soft spot since the founder of San Marino was from Rob Island off their Dalmatian coast, which interestingly enough, people from Poland and Russia are very frequent visitors, so much to the point where many shopkeepers in San Marino are actually able to communicate in these languages, which pleases the customers. Even more interesting, Iran has close ties to San Marino, business-wise at least, as Iran-based
Holy
airlines
shit.
that head to Europe often stop over in Rimini Airport under the San Marino Authority side because San Marino is one of the only few European countries that has a refueling agreement with Iran. When it comes to their best friends, however, it's really no shocker, Italy usually ranks number one. Italians, especially from the Romagna region, and the Samarinese are essentially one family. They are culturally similar, they share many of the same values, people often commute to each other's countries for work and school, intermarriages are very common, and overall, they get each other the best. In conclusion, San Marino kind of started out as a country from a dude that wanted to escape constant trouble. Little did he know that 1700 years later, millions of people would be visiting every year, lining up to check out wacky vampire museums and buying guns and crossbows.
I'm gonna live stream after this. What the fuck, bro? I'm not gonna do that.
Team. Oh, San Marino. Keeping a low profile in the coolest way possible. Stay tuned. Sao Tome and Principe is coming up next.
Bro, I just watched the video that you wanted to watch, so shut the fuck up. I mean, come on. Like, you're just being annoying right now. We were gonna watch Real Life Lore and The Truth About Gandhi. Let's watch Gandhi first.
Mahatma Gandhi, a hero of India, a man who, through a campaign of non-violence, freed his country from the clutches of British
He
imperialists.
can stream until
He was not just a
Sunday if
father
he
of a
wants
nation,
to.
But for some, he was considered almost saintly. He also liked to sleep alone in beds with his grandnieces and other young women, and held some shockingly racist views toward other races. Today, we'll shock some of you. We might even offend.
I mean, you generally, when you
some of
think
you.
about Gandhi, you think about a very pure human being, but I guess it's not like that.
I also think by the time we got to the end of this show, you will have also
Hey,
changed
yo.
your mind as to how you think about Mr. Gandhi. Before we get to that, here's an abridged introduction to the man born Mohandas Karamchand.
I mean, I'm just gonna silence this guy, to be honest. The first person that I have ever banned or removed, pretty soon that timeout. Yeah, that's it. I never ban people, or I never block
Gandhi
anyone,
on
but-
October 2nd, 1869. He grew up in fairly comfortable surroundings, seeing that his father held the position of chief minister of the Indian state of Porbandar.
You generally think of Gandhi as someone who wasn't wealthy or wasn't, I mean, poor.
Mother was said to be a very pious woman, which is where the young Gandhi discovered the beliefs of cherishing the simple things in life. The religious devotion he saw by his mother would foster in him a sense of ethics that he later became famous for on a global scale.
Okay.
Things such as nonviolence, tolerance of others' beliefs, vegetarianism, and acts of self-purification were his
Congratulations,
bad.
once again.
They were also steeped
Do
in
not spam.
hypocrisy
Yeah,
at
do not
times.
spam.
His beliefs were
Do-
put to
do
the
not be
test when he
rude.
went over to London to study. Before he left India, he swore to his mom to not fall for the enticements of modern life, to stay clear of women and meat, and generally to uphold the beliefs she taught him. But while studying law in London, he witnessed late 19th century industry and all the horrors that could come with it. The streets of London were certainly not paved with gold. Far from it, many Londoners with their ragged clothes and dirty faces didn't seem to be enjoying Britain's industrial wealth.
Wow.
Gandhi witnessed poverty, but he also witnessed activism there. It was the same when he went over to South Africa, where he saw much of the population living in abject poverty. Gandhi might have been an educated lawyer by this time.
Why was he so surprised? He was from India.
Didn't mean he wasn't told, like other Indians, that because of his skin color, he wasn't allowed to walk on certain footpaths or enter certain buildings. There's more to this story, but let us just tell you the good Gandhi story first. He was disgusted. There he was, an educated man who considered himself as much English as he was Indian, but treated as a second-class citizen by the Europeans.
Wow.
One time, he was kicked out of a train coach because of his race. Like many other people of color, his rights were taken away from him. On other occasions, he was beaten up for not making room for a white passenger. If that wasn't bad enough, he was barred for staying at certain hotels, even though he had the money to pay for them. The story goes that Gandhi understood the many wrongs committed by the imperialists, and so it was at this juncture in his life when he decided he was going to bring about change. But his resistance, in line with his religious beliefs, had to be peaceful. One of the most famous lines is, "Every revolution begins with a single act of defiance." And this is how he began fighting for the rights of Indians. This is how he got a name for himself as an activist, which on one dark day in Durban, South Africa, almost got him lynched by a
Gotta
mob
go to sleep. Have a great now. You too, brother. Thank you so much for being here.
of angry white folks. He spent several years in South Africa, but he knew that India needed him. When he announced his departure from Africa, a statesman wrote, "The saint has left our shores." This statesman was a white South African. He finished the sentence, "I hope forever." Back in India, Gandhi carried on fighting for people's rights. He'd been beaten up, he'd been jailed, he'd been harangued and oppressed, and he still preached peace. He might have supported the British war effort, but he also never shied away from criticizing the British imperialists. We apologize to our Gandhi enthusiasts for skipping over many years of his life, but we think most of you know that this man became one of the most powerful people in India. His form of Indian nationalism was
and I
embraced
think even today in India, is there like, for example, in the U.S., you got the Kennedy family, you got the Bush family, you probably soon have the Obama family. So I think right now that like the Gandhi family is still very relevant. Am I right?
By much of the country, most of the country, in fact. And they started to believe that with the right will, the Indian people could be free of the British. His activism got him arrested on March 10th, 1922, and he spent the next 2 years behind bars. But he wasn't done.
China, you're sure about that?
In the years to follow, he would lead many
2 years
of the
ago in the
Indian
UK,
people to
a few of the
peacefully revolt
statues of
against
Gandhi
many
got
facets
attacked
of
because of
British
his
rule.
beliefs.
His followers, and there were many, went to prison for their acts of civil disobedience. In 1932, while in prison again, he undertook a now famous fast over the disenfranchisement of those at the bottom of India's caste system, people called the untouchables. When Indians saw how willing Gandhi was to die for his people, for the rights of the country's poorest, it spread hope through the hearts of the nation. Then the Second World War happened, and again the Indians were expected to fight for the British. But this time, the Indian National Congress wanted a form of self-government if it were to throw Indian nationals onto the battlefield. Close to 90,000 of them
And
were
not only that, but the Japanese either maybe not attacked India directly, but caused a famine, and like Winston Churchill didn't care much about that. So India's role in the war definitely
eventually
not very
die. Not to mention the perhaps 2.5 million
mentioned.
total Indian casualties of war. Before the war ended, Gandhi had already started
that's
the
pretty
Quit
big.
India movement. And then on August 15th, 1947, India finally got its independence. Okay, so what you've just heard is the condensed story of a man who saw cruelty and unfairness in the world and wanted to do something about it. He then took considerable risks in fighting the perpetrators of those wrongs, and he made it his life's work. It's now time we got into costume and became the devil's advocate. Here's a quote for you. Hitler killed 5 million Jews. It's the greatest crime of our
the Gandhi family mostly leads the India's Congress Party,
time, but the Jews should have offered themselves to the butcher's knife. They should have thrown themselves into the sea from cliffs. It would have
More like
aroused
Japanese
the world and the people of Germany.
provoked the
As it
British
is,
to
they
use
succumbed
scorched
anyway
earth
in
and
their
caused a famine.
millions.
Oh,
yes, those
okay.
were the thoughts of Gandhi. He was taking nonviolence
wait.
to another level.
Wait. I need to hear this.
But the Jews should have offered themselves to the butcher's knife. They should have thrown themselves into the sea from cliffs. It would have aroused the world and the people of Germany. As it is, they succumbed anyway in their millions. Yes, those were the thoughts of Gandhi. He was taking nonviolence to another level, and he was not surprisingly condemned for saying such things. While his belief might not exactly fall into an ugly truth category, his moral absolutism made no sense at all to some people, especially those under attack from Germany. When the Nazis were bombing England, Gandhi seemed to think the Brits should not bother fighting back. This is what he said about that. I would like you to lay down the arms you have as being useless for saving you or humanity. You will
What?
invite Herr Hitler and Signor Mussolini to take what they want of the countries you call your possessions. If these gentlemen choose to occupy your homes, you will vacate them. If they do not give you free passage out, you will allow yourselves, man, woman, and child, to be slaughtered, but you will refuse to owe allegiance to them. In hindsight, we all now know the many added horrors that would have occurred had governments followed Gandhi's...
Yo, what the fuck? Okay, I'm just trying to process all of this. Yeah, this fucking sucks. I mean, this is just like, it doesn't even make sense. Like, I mean, hey.
Instructions and just allowed Nazi Germany to do what it wanted. His assertion also sounds much worse when you consider some people now say that Gandhi was a racist. In 2019, in the African nation of Malawi, people were saying just that. In Ghana, that same year, a Gandhi statue was taken down at a university. You might think that's strange, given what we told you about Gandhi fighting for people's rights when he was in South Africa. Well, in Ghana, many people right now don't have much love for Gandhi.
I think part of Gandhi was like how Buddhists in Southeast Asia burned themselves in protest rather than a revolt. True, and I guess that maybe in a weird way could have worked. Okay, sorry, my dog is just like... Yeah, we were talking about Gandhi, right? No right to self-defense, like we were going to give him up when our cities were being bombed. Exactly. But that's just a terrible thing that it's not a good idea. It doesn't make any sense. It would result in more British casualties, maybe not military, but civilian, which I think it's worse. Well, our lives are equal, but like imagine, I know, it's just absurd. You know?
Which can be seen on Twitter.
I really don't agree with this,
Gandhi
obviously.
must fall. Maybe you think it's a bit severe, but it sounds righteous enough when you know some of the racist things Gandhi wrote back.
Nah, the
when he was in
Nazis were
Africa.
too ruthless.
For instance, he once
I think
wrote
stop,
that white
yeah.
folks, despite their flaws, should be the predominating race in South Africa. You see, the young Gandhi, as you know, went over to England to get himself an education. It seems it was his dealings with the ruling British that convinced him that Europeans were just more civilized than the black people in Africa. We should say that he changed his entire stance in time and became an anti-racist, but it wasn't always like that. He also wrote in a letter summing up the beliefs
But
to the
white people should be ruling in South Africa. I mean, kind of weird considering the contest, definitely. Maybe he thought that armed protests would provoke retribution. Yeah, but knowing what we know now about the Nazis and also the Soviets, you know, I don't think just quitting I understand maybe the logic, but quitting your arms and just like not doing anything would have resulted in England being invaded, most of Europe being invaded by either the Nazis or later the Soviets. Kind of
British that the general belief seems to prevail in the colony that the Indians are a little better, if at all, than the savages or the natives of Africa. He absolutely thought that many Africans were savages, and he used derogatory language too when referring to black people, such as the term kafir. In 1904, he wrote another letter stating that he was upset about these people living amongst Indians, saying, "About the mixing of the Kafirs with the Indians, I must confess I feel most strongly." He wrote that as long as blacks were mixed with Indians, then diseases such as the plague would further spread. You can now understand why some people are now calling Gandhi out. They also accuse him of being a hypocrite, saying that he didn't believe in the rights of Africans at all, while also working with the British government in segregating whites from blacks. A stunning example of this is when Gandhi petitioned the colonial...
Sometimes we forget that there can be racism between people of color, right? So I think in America sometimes happens that Hispanics and blacks go at each other, and now we have Indians and Africans
government in South Africa
going at each other.
to ensure the Indian people didn't have to share the same queue as black people when they went to the post office in Durban. He didn't think it was fair that Indians couldn't queue with the whites. Some people now try to cover for Gandhi, saying he was just a product of his times, although one would think that a person of high intelligence would still have known right from wrong, even if they didn't always fight for what was right. Others now say that Gandhi was a card-carrying member of the Aryan Brotherhood, and no, we don't mean that bunch of violent, angry neo-Nazis whose pastime is smoking amphetamines and sharpening
Yeah,
ships.
the prison
We mean
gang.
the Brotherhood that wore suits and smoked pipes in dingy boardrooms. For example, when asked just how racist Gandhi was, one of his new critics wrote, "Gandhi believed in the Aryan Brotherhood. This involved whites and Indians higher up than Africans on the civilized scale. To that extent, he was a racist. To the extent that he wrote Africans out of history or was keen to join with whites in their subjugation, he was a racist. As we say, Gandhi shifted his stance, but how much he shifted we can't say. The question is, when he was telling people to lie down for the Germans, did any part of him still believe in superior races? You have to remember, when Gandhi was in South Africa, it wasn't as if black people hadn't already for years been fighting for their rights. You can't just say Gandhi was a product of the times, because he knew very well that a race of people rightly felt they were violently oppressed. When Gandhi was in England, he spent most of his time hanging out with intellectuals and the odd vegetarian, and then once he was in
So very racist against Africans. He wanted Indians to be like whites, or well, not be like whites, but be like have the same status. Very weird. I don't know. Many Africans never forgot Gandhi's racial beliefs, and I think that's fair.
South Africa, he found himself having to share the same train carriages and join the same queues of a people he referred to as coolies. He hated this. That much was evident in 1906 when, during the Zulu Rebellion, Gandhi supported the British in what he termed the Revolt of the Kafirs. These people, who he pretty much believed were barbarians, he said deserved British rule because they spent most of their days in indolence and nakedness. Again, people say you have to forgive him for his foibles. They say he had his road to Damascus moment and he changed his views. Nonetheless, as his critics still point out, even if he did hold some racist views on racial hierarchies, why could he not ever refer to African people as Africans and not coolies or Kafirs?
Yeah.
His utter lack of respect for Africans was evident when he attended a dinner party held by the British imperialist Hugh Wyndham.
I would love, well, maybe we don't have someone from India right now in the stream, but if I upload the video and you guys see that, like, is there a lot of racism in India against other races, like maybe Hispanics, like or Africans?
4th Baron Leakenfield.
I do understand that in a lot of countries in Asia, the European beauty standards are very prevalent, and a lot of people want to look white. So maybe there is some form of racism or xenophobia. But I mean,
Gandhi was overjoyed
that's
to be
kinda
seated
over
next to
the
some of
top.
the empire's toffs, and he quite enjoyed his aubergine cutlets and plum tart. He gave a speech about his leaving Africa, saying he hoped the Europeans of South Africa would take a humanitarian and imperial view of the Indian question. But one of his biographers pointed something else out. That was the fact that Gandhi never said any farewells to any Africans, even though he'd been in Africa. That biographer said Gandhi didn't think Africans deserved a goodbye message. We hammered this point home just a little bit, only because you have to admit that it's quite a huge deal when a human rights
I
advocate
think they don't like Persians in East Asians.
fighting to end discrimination went along with discrimination and human rights abuses. If he was flawed in public, what about his personal life? Well, things get even more strange now.
Oof.
Gandhi once wrote to his son that a person
This is where some very creepy shit can come out.
who marries in order to satisfy his carnal desire is lower than even the beast. He had no time for casual sex and human relations, and he himself became celibate at age 38. He'd gotten married when he was 13, but turned away from sex later. So then why did the Guardian newspaper write that Gandhi was prone to having weird, manipulative flirtations with young, unmarried women? Why also in 2021 did some people in California knock down a statue of the great man? The answer is that some people think Gandhi wasn't just hypocritical when it came to racial equality, but also in
California.
relation to his thoughts on sexual purity. When it was decided that the statue in California should be re-erected, a group called the Organization for Minorities of India was dead set against it. When asked why, a spokesperson for the group explained Gandhi was instrumental in influencing national treatment of women in India. He said, "My life is my
Sigma
message."
grind,
And the
said
life he
Gandhi.
modeled for the nation was one of sexually exploiting his grandnieces and many other teenage girls under the guise of performing celibacy experiments. Gandhi stands accused of being sexist, racist, and also committing creepy acts with young women. Like other spiritual leaders that have tainted the earth with their footsteps, Gandhi has been called a predator, which we don't have to tell you is a really bad look for someone touted as being a man of peace with a pure soul. Nonetheless, when people are accused of such things, we should hope there's a lot of evidence, or even some evidence, to back it up. Well, he was against birth control, unless it was the kind of control that involved a man or woman taming their animal passions.
Yikes, yikes.
Once he said, if people have too much sex, they will become soft-brained, unhinged, in fact, mental and moral wrecks. Then, when he was an aging man in the 30s, he asked his young grandniece to get into bed with him. He told her that it was an experiment to see if he could control his own animal passions. As bad as it looked, he didn't hide what he was doing, which was to test or further test his conquest of sexual desire. It was written that he didn't care what people thought about it. One author said, when a close
Indians are probably more concerned with caste rather than race. They discriminate against caste even amongst Indians in North America. Wow.
Disciple heard of Gandhi's experiments with celibacy.
Caste system,
he
of
had
course, in
threatened to
India,
leave the
very
ashram
prevalent
unless
even
Gandhi
today.
rectified his predatory behavior. His choices were clearly never acceptable. These experiments not only involved his grandniece, but other young women and girls at the ashram. He never did have intercourse with them, but let's just say he really tested himself. As for how his wife felt about all this, Gandhi never seemed to show her much love. He once said he couldn't bear to look at her in the face, and is famously known for denying her life-saving drugs. He certainly took a lot of criticism for the 2-week celibacy experiments, and he still does now, just as he does for many of his more conservative beliefs regarding sex and gender. To give you an idea about those beliefs, his answer to 2 women being attacked by men in the street was for them to shave off their hair so they were no longer attractive to men. Yeah, he blamed the women for a male problem. Even once
Yikes.
went as far as to
What
say that
the
a woman's
fuck?
menstruation cycle was actually a manifestation of the distortion of a woman's soul by her sexuality. For many people, Gandhi was a racist with a predilection for sexually focused predatory behavior. Others say, leave him alone. The man did good on the whole and can be said to have done something not many people can attest to in actually changing the world. Today, we've just played the devil's advocate, and we'll let you decide what to make of Gandhi. The darker parts of his life don't figure much when it comes to his legacy, but hey, mythology
Gandhi doing experiment has the same vibe as
now you need to watch
me
another
staring at
myth-busting
research.
extravaganza, The Ugly Truth About Mother Teresa, or have a
Oh, there's also one for Mother Teresa. Damn. Oh, God. This was kind of harsh and strong. Jesus fucking Christ. Well, let's finish with real life lore. What do you all think? What do you all think about Gandhi? What the fuck? I guess I don't like Gandhi now. Yeah, I mean, I don't negate what he did, all the good. However, it's just very creepy. His racial views, all this experiments, just creepy. Now, every time I think about Gandhi, I'm gonna be thinking about he's just a creepy old man, a creepy old racist man. I don't know. It's just sad, but in a way, it happens with a lot of historical figures. I don't know. Definitely left there very disappointed. What's this video about? Why 1/3 of France is almost empty? I don't know. But let's watch it. Let's finish the stream with
France
this.
is one of Europe's and one of the world's most significant countries. Home to 68 million people, France is the 3rd most populous nation in Europe, while the French economy is the 7th largest in the world, nearly identical in size to India, a country with 20 times the population. The French language and French culture are widely known throughout the world, while the French military is the 8th best funded in the world, with bases all across the planet. France is a major global great power and has been for centuries now, which is why it's so surprising that nearly 1/3 of the country here is basically just an empty void. And partially because of that, France has been diminishing in influence for centuries and continues to do so. For decades, people have famously identified metropolitan France in Europe.
Yeah, I do think there's a lot of diminishing of France, all the way from the past century, the empire. Gandhi was only for independence of India. Was never really an egalitarian.
It's looking like a hexagon, which is why the country is so often referred to as simply l'hexagone. And due to this unique shape, it's
never heard that
incredibly
in my
easy to
life.
look at France through the lens of geometry when discussing regions, statistics, demography, and history. For instance, if you take a map of France and you draw a diagonal line from the port city of Le Havre on the English Channel
Le Havre.
over to straight through the center of Marseille on the Mediterranean, you'll cut the country roughly in half, and yet 60% of the French live to the east of this line, while only 40% live to the west of it.
I
a
mean,
fact that
is that a huge difference? 40 to 60? I don't think that's that bad.
can be seen significantly more clearly when you switch out the map for a population density map. But what's far more interesting than
So
that
I think this is obviously Paris. I think this is Lyon. Bordeaux, I think is this one. And I don't know the others. Marseille.
That line are these lines. In between them is a stretch of France nearly 1,000 kilometers long and about 400 kilometers wide on average. Nearly 1/3 of France's entire territory that's about the same size as Belarus. Within this large zone, the population density of people is only about 30 persons per square kilometer, about the same as the US state of West Virginia, which has led to French demographers referring to the area as France's empty diagonal. And while in reality, that's hardly empty. Compared with the rest of France and Europe, it is a strange anomaly. Throughout the entirety of France,
it's very strange.
On average, the population density is more like 120 people per square kilometer, 4 times more than the density of people living within the diagonal. To give even more perspective, neighboring Germany has a population density of 232 per square kilometer, while England has more like 270, and is therefore 9 times as densely populated as France's diagonal.
Wow.
France is politically divided between 18 regions that
let's keep in mind that if you live in America, for example, this might sound a little bit more normal, but a lot of countries in Europe are very dense.
Further split up into departments and then into communes, somewhat similar to how America divides itself into states and counties. The least populated department in France is Lozère, with just a total of 76,000 inhabitants for all its nearly 5,200 square kilometers. That is comparable in size to the state of Palestine, which is home to more than 5 million people, while the entire population of Lozère could all fit comfortably into Wembley Stadium in London, with 24,000 seats left over to spare.
Wow.
And of course, Lozère is directly in the center of the empty diagonal, the most sparsely populated region of France, where Lozère is hardly an exception. All of these departments running through the center of France are substantially less populated than those on either side of it to the west and the east. So what's been causing this?
Heading off now. It's nearly 2:30 in the morning here. Have a good rest of the stream. Thank you so much, man. Thank you so much for hanging in there. Have a good rest too.
Anomaly in the core of one of Europe's largest countries to be happening? Well, for one thing, it's been important to understand some of the prior demographic history of France, which I promise is actually fascinating. The French philosopher Auguste Comte once said that demography is destiny, and for centuries, France's demography guaranteed much of the nation's successes and influence. For most of history, France was by far the most populous country on the European continent. During the medieval period,
Exactly. What does that mean? The more people you have, the more influence you're going to get. And it applies all through history, right? Germany, the UK, France, along with China, for example, the US.
1 out of every 4 people in Europe were French, and even by the 17th century, it was still 1 out of every 5. During the French Revolutionary and Napoleonic Wars, France was still the most populous nation in Europe, and they had a higher population than even the entirety of Russia, and nearly double the population of the United Kingdom. In fact, at the time of Napoleon, France was the 4th most populous country in the entire world, lagging only behind China, India, and Japan. Such a huge population compared with all of her neighbors helped
more populated than the US
to explain France's dominance in European affairs throughout the medieval, Renaissance, and early industrial periods. But beginning in the 19th century, this demographic dominance over all of her neighbors began to shift away dramatically. The birth rate in France began to diminish in the late 18th century, far before they began to do so in every other European country, and then during the Revolutionary and Napoleonic Wars.
Because again, you can understand a lot of countries right now in France, in Europe, are experiencing this demographic, not collapse, but how can I put it? Like a demographic shortening, right? The demographic, the birth rate is going down. So there are less people being born. I think for France right now, it's actually not that bad because they accept a lot of immigrants. But it is a problem for global influence.
French citizens were killed, which led to France's low population growth throughout the rest of the 19th century. For many years in France across the 1800s, the number of deaths in the country exceeded the number of births. And then during the First World War, France lost 10% of its entire active male population in just 4 years. 1.3 million French were killed during the war, and along with even more births being forgone by millions of potential fathers being away at war, the French population dropped by more than 3 million. And of course, the areas that were hit the hardest by this population drop was the rural French countryside. Because at the same time that these trends were happening, France was also rapidly urbanizing and the population was becoming highly centralized around just a few key population centers.
Eastern Europe had
Marseille,
really bad
Lyon,
case
Lille,
population
and most
decline.
importantly of
Yeah,
all,
I'm talking maybe Poland, Hungary. They have some really bad population decline.
Paris, the ever-growing city. Beginning in the 17th century, Paris began to grow larger and larger as hundreds of thousands of peasants from the French countryside continuously moved there in search of better opportunities. At the beginning of the 20th century, 40% of the French population were still living in the rural countryside. But over decades of intense societal pressures coming from millions of deaths from war, millions of men being away at war, decreasing fertility rates, and ever-increasing rates of urbanization, just 85 years later in 1985, that rate of French residing in the countryside had plummeted down to only 8%. And by then, nearly 1 out of every 5 French were living in just the Paris metropolitan area alone.
Just 8% rural population. That's very low. Definitely out there, one of the lowest. I think in America, the rural population is something like 25. And you got to consider America is very developed. So 8%, that must be pretty low. East Germany is also experiencing a lot less densely populated than the West.
Alone. But while urbanization and war certainly had massive effects on the population of the French countryside, not all areas were affected evenly. The mountainous areas of the French Alps, for example, while technically having a slightly dipping population, have a thriving tourism industry. And the majority of the French wine country, while also very rural, also continues to have a thriving industry in tourism.
Yeah, so Bordeaux, this is the Loire Valley. I think this has to be Champagne. This one on the south, I forgot.
Appeal that has kept the areas decently well populated. But there are larger geographic issues at play here as well that
Too many
help
young
to
East
explain the lack
Europeans
of
living
people
for
in the empty
opportunities in the
diagonal.
West.
When looking back at the map,
No one
you'll
moves
see
there.
that the
True.
empty diagonal spans one
I
landlocked.
mean, the other day I was looking, Ukraine has a lower GDP per capita and lower quality of life than Mexico. Imagine that. That's a country in Europe. So I understand that nobody really wants to move there.
End of France
Although
by
that's
its
a
border
huge
with
problem
Belgium
for-
to another landlocked end by its border with Spain. And while not every coastal area in France is highly populated, it makes sense that many of them would be, as 40% of the entire global human population lives within just 100 kilometers of a coastline.
Yeah,
so,
damn.
by drawing these lines across the French interior,
fucked
you're
up.
essentially drawing a line from one area
And that was before the war with Russia.
that would be statistically less populated.
Good night,
to another
everyone. I have
area
to go.
That would also be statistically less
Or not hello.
populated.
Goodbye.
In fact, if you
Thank you
ignore
for being
international
here.
borders entirely, the empty diagonals population trend continues and even expands its width across the Pyrenees into Spain, a country dealing with its own demographic issues in the form of low birth
Oh,
rates.
yeah.
But there's still
Absolutely.
more to it than just not being near the coast. The areas that the diagonal cover are largely agricultural land, and throughout the world, as agriculture has become more automated and industrialized, less workers in the industry are needed. In fact,
course.
40 years ago, about 1.6 million people in France worked in agriculture, whereas now it's roughly only 400,000, or 4 times less people. Fewer jobs and fewer opportunities to make a living inevitably mean that people eventually move on. And regardless of the country, low population density itself can become a sort of self-repeating feedback loop as well. Areas with lower population often have minimal commercial activity, and as the already small population ages, there's nothing keeping the young.
And this is a problem not only for rural communities who lose people, but also large urban centers that have to take in more people. And for cities like Paris, that must be rough. You got to manage the water supply, the sewage, the supply chains of food, the urban design, right? Building on the outskirts of the city and expanding. All of that is just very complicated, and it's probably not great for Mexico City, for example.
Younger generations in the area, so they leave. Not just for work, but also for all the amenities that other, more thriving areas can bring. And while the French government has expressed concerns over the issue and even funded research into how to fix it, there remains no real answer. While France's geography makes
Because
this
that's the thing. How do you really solve it?
This issue
incentives.
seem relatively unique to France. It really isn't. Demographic shifts from the countryside to the cities is a global phenomenon, and so too is the fact that more people generally tend to live closer to the coastlines, where there's just more economic activity. Therefore, it shouldn't really be too surprising after all that, wow, people actually do be living in cities. Now, if you want to start analyzing your own worldwide geographic and demographic trends, you're going to need a pretty solid grasp on things like geometry and statistics.
And courses. Whew. Definitely feel bad for the French rural communities that are so beautiful. And me, someone who really appreciates wine and wine country, it's really sad to see some of these communities decline, even though they are not by any means over or poor or like destroyed, but they are declining, and that's pretty sad. And France is so much more than just Paris, right? And I've never been to Europe, but France just seems like such a beautiful country to visit and live in and experience as a whole. Anyway, so we've been here long enough, almost 3 hours of stream. Holy fuck. Thank you all so much for being here, for watching, for staying. Just remember, don't spam or I'm gonna fucking block you. And I'll see you in the next stream. Have a good night, y'all. Mexico should decentralize its urbanization to northern Mexico, maybe to the Yucatan. But that's my uninformed take. I agree Mexico has to decentralize. The north, it's complicated because the north has mountains and deserts, but it does have to decentralize. Paris is cool. I've been to Paris as a kid like twice. That sounds pretty nice. Definitely, it's great traveling in between Europe. Anyways, see ya, chat. Thank you all.